get started. And welcome, Salim. It's interesting that I'm glad you were able to hop in. Somebody's just asking about you in the architecture Q&A. And when is Salim going to come back in? Hopefully today. So I'm glad to see that it was today. So I got lots of stuff to talk about. I wanted to talk about just generally how to make a game, some game dev stuff, and then take some questions and then go over whatever other stuff you guys wanted to talk about. Before we get started, though, I wanted to make sure that I don't forget to mention the VR course down below. A subscriber sent it over to me. It looked really interesting and cool. Go check out the VR course if you want to learn some VR multiplayer game development stuff on Udemy. It looked pretty cool, so I definitely go check that out. Anyway, welcome, guys, and hello. How's it going over there?
Hello.
Anybody excited to see Salim back?
I am.
No, everybody's gonna be like, no, who the hell is this guy? Get him out of here.
Yeah. Thumbs down.
Thumbs down. Oh, so it looks like, are you just getting settled in now?
Yeah. Still shifting some stuff around, but pretty comfortable right now.
Nice. It'll be good. Hopefully start popping in all the time. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
You been playing anything new over I guess before we get started, is there any new games that everybody should know about that I don't know about yet that I should try?
Let me see. So Death's Door, I'm sure people have checked that out. I actually did a marathon yesterday on Ender Lilies, which is a phenomenal game. Got into Subnautica. Been playing some Code Vein with my wife and the God Eater 3, doing some research on some Hunter games again. And then there's a game I was actually going to pick up yesterday. It's a top-down police game. I forget what it's called, but it's like a Miami Hotline style, but it focuses on these two cops and their story, but it focuses more on them using like non-lethal means. It reminds me of remember the old Police Quest SWAT games?
That's what I was thinking of. Yeah,
it looks exactly like that. Like you have to go in and taser and arrest them and get information and stuff, but it's like all top down, so it's like super interesting. The take on it. So
what's that one called?
It's called. Let me find it here. Sorry, I did Airs bad for. It is called Police Stories. Look, I can give you a link or you can find it, but
yeah, I was just pulling it up on Steam right now.
Yeah, it looks really, really cool. And it's co-op, which is cool. I think it might be even couch co-op. Yep. It's
on sale
and online co-op. Yeah, it looks great. Of course, I'm watching someone live stream and they're just killing people. But yeah. But yeah, so been playing a bunch of other stuff. Really just splitting my time games where I can. Work's been kind of busy, so.
You mentioned you were researching something. What was that?
Just playing some hunting games for some stuff I can't speak on right now. But yeah,
okay. Just trying to get prepared for some game stuff you're gonna work on or something.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay, some ideas. Interesting. Okay. Oh, I got a couple things to try out. I guess go check those out.
I haven't played any new games, but I'll tell you what. I saw the movie Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds, and that is all about video games.
Yep.
It was interesting. I liked it.
Yeah, I've been wanting to watch that. I forgot it was out.
I think it came out a couple weeks ago, didn't it?
Only this week here, but with COVID, who knows when the release dates are.
Is that only in theaters, or is that something you can watch at home too? I have to check that out.
I thought that was streaming.
I don't know. I braved the theater for it.
Okay.
How
Well, I'm
was
gonna
that
find out and
experience?
check that one out. That was the one where he's like a video game character and
Yeah,
realizes he's a video game character, right?
Yeah,
he's
an
he's an
NPC.
NPC, and then he breaks out of the mold.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's the
And
thing, you're
they
always afraid
switch
of with your
between
NPC.
they switch between real life and the game studio and in game.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, kind of like a Grand Theft Auto essentially world with characters that come to life, I
Interesting.
guess.
And your character's
Yeah.
just popping out. You ever been afraid of that, Salim? Your video game
What's up?
character just pops out and kills you one night. You ever have a nightmare about a character you created in a game?
No, I do all my characters justice. If they popped out, they would just pop out to congratulate me or to thank me, I should say.
They all like you. Like, Father,
Yeah.
thank you for creating me. My evil.
Whole point
Let's
of my
go destroy the
characters is
world
to
together.
kill players. So
Oh, this is good stuff. So, yeah, I guess before we take any questions, I wanted to just quickly talk a little bit about the process of making a game. I thought actually is perfect this name here, and like what process people actually go through when they're making a game, kind of start to finish. And hey, Andrew, you're working on this now, right? And is this the first one that you've done where you're kind of starting it and going through the whole process and releasing it, or have you done a couple other ones, smaller scale or something that you can talk about?
Yeah, I've done a couple small ones way back in the day. I mean, the first one was called Photo Hunt Online, and that was released in 2013 or 14, maybe 2014, and it got taken down very quickly because the term photo hunt is trademarked. So that was around for about a month. Oops. And then a couple small projects before I made The Barbarian, which is still available on iOS, still makes about a coffee or two a week. So that's nice. It's been consistent like that, but it was never successful in regards to the 2.5 years it took me to make it. But of course, during that 2.5 years, I was learning Unity, learning how to make games. The game itself, I never was able to update it because after Unity switched to C# and Unity 5 came out, there were something like 96,000 errors when I loaded it up and realized that it didn't make sense to redo it in C# because I had used Unity script at the time. So
you would have had to stick with an old version of Unity until that no longer worked to go to iOS. So
yeah.
And so, but you've gone through that process a few times, though, right?
I have, and so I'm doing it differently now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're doing some things differently, but I mean, what about your overall process? Like just the planning, starting, finishing. I mean, is that dramatically changed, or you feel like it's just kind of slowly evolved?
I think the biggest change is I'm trying to focus on the game systems first, rather than just going headlong. You know, I mean, before I didn't even know what kind of systems I needed. Now I've got a much better sense. I'm sure I'm still missing things, but now as I go forward, I'm trying to essentially get the entire game done, you know, in one scene or two scenes, so you can walk back and forth between the scenes, and do all of that before I actually build out the first level. So that essentially I can test every system in the game, every spell in the game, every weapon in the game, every thing that might happen in the game in these two test scenes before I even start building out the first level, just to make that process, I think, easier. I think it'll be easier if I have the systems first rather than the levels, where before I kept facing challenges where I'd add new things and then my levels needed to be modified or updated. So I'm trying to be a little smarter as a single person team.
Okay, interesting. And one of the things I was curious about, I guess, and I think this kind of applies both of you, like when you're starting out a new game, like how do you actually start? Do you start like with a design doc and just start writing stuff out? You start on a whiteboard, just jotting shit down, or do you start writing code, or do you like plan out the entire project, plan out a day's worth or a week's worth? Like how much preparation work do you do like right at the start? So say somebody like wants to make a game, Like, hey, I'm going to make my first game. I don't know how to get started. I don't know what the process is like at all. What's the first thing you guys would both recommend doing, or to kind of kick that process off? Just say we'll go through a couple of the steps or all the steps, but what's number one for you two?
Well, I mean, obviously you have to have an idea, but I'd say, I mean, it depends on the person, how well you like, how you go about planning, how you lay out, depending on how your brain works. But I find that you can just get a whiteboard, blank whiteboard, write your idea on there, maybe a statement or something that describes it, and then make a list of what it is and what it isn't. Because right there, you're kind of trimming the fat on what you want to make. Because if you just dive in with, hey, I want to make an RPG I want to make a sci-fi RPG about a guy that shoots guns. That's a super broad idea. And then you start making stuff and you throw all these ideas in, and then you realize you get to the end of the road and you're just like, I don't need half this stuff. So you end up wasting a bunch of time. So refining and narrowing down what this idea is, and giving it, giving the skeleton flesh is certainly a good way to start. To Andrew's example of building the test scene and building all systems is huge, especially if you haven't refined the idea down first. So once you get the idea refined down, then you can go about defining, each individual thing, and of course breaking it down lower and lower and lower until you get like a really detailed task list of things. But yeah, that's where I would start, is just away from a computer, maybe a notepad, pencil, go old school, whiteboard. Whiteboards are like one of the greatest tools of any creative mind. And just drill down what exactly you are trying to make.
That is, I think, a great way of doing it. And the one thing that I know I'm missing today, which Salim, I wonder where it falls into your flow, is testing. Like, at what point are you testing it to make sure it's fun? And I think especially if you're working on a new mechanic or something that's, combining various things together, finding the fun is important, because that's a point of failure, right? Where you don't want to make this whole game, spend months working on a story and all this stuff, only to find out once you have something that's playable, people are bored out of their mind.
Yeah.
And as a designer, especially as an independent who, like you said, you start with an idea. Most of us have an idea that is near and dear to us. Mm-hmm. It's our child. It's our golden little egg that we want to nurture.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be biased to thinking this idea is good and this game is going to be fun. And so, of course, it's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've heard, and I haven't done this myself, but I've heard talk of doing vertical slices of games in order to find the fun.
Yep.
Should we be doing that as solo developers, as small teams?
I think a vertical slice is an important step in development in general. It is like a significant milestone, because it means that you've at least accomplished a functional version or representation of your ideas as one whole thing. But as far as like an individual thing being fun, you have to look at other big developers, Nintendo probably being the biggest one, and Miyamoto. Like, they will isolate a specific thing like a Mario jump and just ask the question, is this fun? How does this work? And then they'll just introduce other things, and okay, we've gotten this thing to be fun. Now, is it fun when we add, plus this? The unfortunate thing about saying things like finding the fun, which I use all the time, or just saying, is it fun? Is that fun is such a subjective thing, that even when something is near and dear to you, excuse me, as a solo developer, the difficult part is being objective. So as a solo developer, I would definitely suggest that you have someone else just pop in. Definitely find that someone who may not be in any way attached to the idea or even like games that much or play games that much can be useful when it comes to just the interaction of the player with the game, or the experience. how whatever the game might be. So it's definitely hard to, and I've been in this situation. I just had this crazy idea and I'll just start like throwing ideas here and there on a whiteboard or just like, just write. And then like halfway through it, I'll just stop and kind of push back and think and go, okay, this is like Salim's like ultimate thing. But then, I would just get tired of it. Like I have to stop and step out of that super focused box and just think about someone else and playing it. And then just kind of think about what it might look like. And just realize it's kind of a marred, ugly thing. Uh, and then you have to kind of erase some things and step back. But I think like being solo is difficult because you definitely get hyper focused and narrowed in on this one thing being the greatest thing ever. And then when you have someone else look at it, they're just like, what is this? What's going on? So I think at every step where it's sensible, having someone just check it out, give them 5 minutes. Say, hey, check it out without you looking at them or anything like that. Just, hey, here's a build. Can you just let me know how this feels? Can be very helpful. But vertical slice, I think, is a pretty important milestone to get to, because at that point, foundationally, your game is set up. Like you said, you have your 2 scenes. Your vertical slice could basically be one of those scenes and representative gameplay. And if that works for the most part, then that you can move forward from there, because you have found the fun, for lack of a better way to put it, or at least found your game.
Now, with the vertical slice thing, I want to ask a quick question. Andrew, you'd mentioned that in yours, you're putting in all of the stuff, all of the systems, all of the abilities, all of the items. Now, was that a bit of hyperbole, or are you actually planning on doing all of those? And how does that really align with a slice or a vertical slice?
Yeah.
So I guess where are you on that?
So, there's broadly 2 ways of doing a vertical slice. One is building your game and then taking out a slice of that pie, and there's a slice. The other way is to fake it, right? And to basically fake a 5-minute experience of your game. So you don't need all the systems built out. You don't need the, editor scripts that will help you add new characters, add new dialogue, quests, or whatever it might be. You just need a 5-minute, hey, this feels like it's the full game, even though you're going to rewrite every single line in that code. And that's, I don't know if it was Jason Story or somebody was talking about this, about do a vertical slice, fake it, know that you're going to rewrite the entire thing if you go forward with it. I'm not doing that, partly because, I'm still, of course, learning development stuff. There's still a lot that I don't know. So making a fake vertical slice is almost as time consuming as the real thing. And so while I learn the real thing, I'm teaching myself, live streaming it to keep myself honest and to work with the community, and also creating small modules that I'm putting on the asset store to help others out. And that also keeps me honest about what the purpose of systems I'm building are, so that there's more than just the game I'm working on. However, the goal is to get to what Salim was saying, where that level is the vertical slice, where I can be like, okay, here's the first 5 minutes of the game. Create your character, start questing. At some point, it will break down because there won't be more. But how was that first 5 minutes?
Yeah, so creating the abilities and content up to those levels at least.
Yeah, and with the systems, it would be a lot easier to then flesh out the rest of the game. But like, I suppose I only need a couple spells fully fleshed out with particles and sound and whatever it might be, because at the beginning of the game you can only cast a few spells, even though there might be 50 spells in the game. I only need 4 or 5. So the system exists that I can easily create the rest, but I don't have to do all the work on those to get to that first vertical slice.
I mean, if you wanted to vertical slice, you don't necessarily have to focus on like, this is the intro of the game is my vertical slice. Vertical slice can like literally just be any part of the game. So if you in the reference of I want to make every ability, I assume you generally mean I want to make every type of ability. Like there will be a fireball, which is a projectile type ability. I want to have that represented. There will be a jump attack where the player lunges forward and lands and does damage. I want to have something representative of all those different types of functionality that the player will interact with. There will be NPCs that they talk to. There will be something that pops up that they have to use a UI and go through with their controller. These are all things that make your game at a core. There will be enemies that will move vertically a bunch, depending if it's top down or something like that. Enemies that hop, at a certain pattern. So these types of things you can come up with at a base level and kind of put them together in a scene of some sort. And it doesn't have to be a structured thing. It doesn't have to be the tutorial or anything like that, because to your point, when you make the final game, the beginning part isn't going to have all this stuff in it. So if you decide to only do the beginning part of the game, you are actually saying, I only want to work on these things, which is somewhat counter to your desire of like basically representing everything at one point. So it would, to Jason's point, which I didn't hear what he said exactly, but I think the essence of the make a fake vertical slice is more of a build a scene, which you're kind of in that mindset already with saying you want to build the 2 test scenes. Your test scene isn't going to be what you put out as the beginning of your game. I think what he means is basically like build an environment where you have this representative stuff that is probably final, or it's obviously all stuff's going to get rewritten, things are going to change, things are going to evolve and grow. Your fireball isn't the only projectile ability you're going to have in a game. But like you have a scene that is pretty representative of most of the systems in your game, and you get to see them all working together. If it's a multiple level thing, I go from here. On this level, I have a puzzle where I have to use a fireball. From here, I have to do a jump thing or whatever. But this is all representative of one experience, which is your slice. And then when you're done, you may just completely throw that away.
Yeah.
But all the foundation stuff that you established, all the feedback that you got from it, what to do, what not to do, is still there. And then you just apply that across the rest of the cake.
Yeah, and I think part of what Jason was talking about was just not necessarily applicable to what Andrew's doing, where they're trying to concept out and decide whether or not to move forward with it too. In which case, you'll slap things together a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more haphazard, knowing that there's a good chance, like, a 50% or more chance that you're not even going to go forward with this. So this is a test, like it's almost like a prototype. And I feel like that's another phase that people kind of skip to when they're going through this.
What's that? The key word. You shouldn't get vertical slice and prototype. Vertical slice is meant to be like a significant representation of your game. Prototyping is literally experimenting. Like you prototype on the way to a vertical slice. But again, while these things have actual definitions, it depends on how you want to approach them and what language you want to use in relation to them. But yeah, I mean, the fireball and getting it to work, you would prototype how you want to do that. But then the fireball is a piece of your vertical slice in that experience. But then again, on a broader level, you could say, if I want someone to play my vertical slice, and like that could be considered a prototype of your gameplay, because after that, you may just completely blow it up and do something else, or the way that you had to build something in a hurry may completely change. So yeah, it is kind of something that you could throw the two concepts you could kind of mix back and forth, depending on the way that you think about things. But ultimately, vertical slice is a very particular definition, and that should be retained for the purposes of just broad language. But yeah, so I mean, Andrew, the way that you want to approach it sounds like totally viable to me. Definitely, I think part of the excitement also is just kind of getting things together. because hands-on implementation is like one of the best teachers there is. You know, I don't know C# it to any like super high level, but the point, you know, when working in the VR studio with Jason, you know, and just being given a game we're working on, just given carte blanche to just go and experiment and have fun with it. You know, I got to jump into C# and learn some things and teach myself some things, and also bug Jason for an entire weekend after I made some mistakes. But you know, I came out on the other side of that, you know, you know, resurrecting a game from crap and kind of building almost a vertical slice representation, and we went on from there and made something that ended up being pretty fun. So like hands-on experience is huge. So I mean, I'd say just dive in. You know, if you have an idea that you love and you really find experience, I'd say dive in. But definitely getting outside feedback is just going to help you a bunch.
Yeah, I think getting that feedback, being open to making changes as well is important. Not only feedback from others and being open to that, but also being introspective when you're testing it yourself and saying, okay, this amazing thing that is so core to my game isn't quite working. I need to change it and be open to that.
You have to be, an introspection is a very significant term to use, because a lot of people don't understand. And when I've been on here before, I've mentioned it a bunch. But there is one thing that you cannot be afraid to remove something. Like, it is, when something isn't working, if you go through, you know, multiple iterations and it just isn't working, like there's a point when you just have to let it go. And there are a lot of people who just can't do that. There are a lot of studios that just can't do that. And then some small idea that someone can't let go turns into this gigantic, huge feature that uses a lot of resources, and it just doesn't end up being the payout that they wanted. You know, whole features that just don't add to a game because the rest of the game wasn't really built around that feature enhancing it, or enhancing that feature, you know, however it may go. So yeah, you can be introspective, but you have to be able to come out on the other side of that tunnel, be able to make the real decisions on it, versus just saying, oh man, this doesn't really play really well. I'm good enough, I can make it work. You can only try to make it work so many times before you have to accept and be an adult as a developer and just like, all right, let me just cut this out here. Oh, you know what? It isn't exactly what I wanted, but it's still, the game is great and people are giving me feedback. And on the note of feedback, there's feedback, and then there's real feedback, you know, constructive feedback. You cannot be afraid to let someone look at or play your product that you know is certainly open to giving you negative feedback, or, you know, like honest feedback. Negative's not the best word to use there. Getting feedback from someone saying, this is cool, this is great. All right, like why? Like what makes it good and great, and what isn't good or great? You have to be able to ask questions and make sure you get someone who's gonna be totally honest and blunt with you, because someone that beats around the bush, they're not really doing you a favor. They shouldn't be sparing your feelings. You're asking them to actually like not spare your feelings. So that's super important. Especially if you only get a few people, make sure that you're getting people who are definitely going to give you feedback. And if it's someone who doesn't feel comfortable giving you feedback, then you have to find some way for them to feel comfortable. Just, you know, some, you know, blind response thing or something like that, like some way for them to be completely candid without worrying about them hurting you or something, if it's someone close to you or whatever. But
Ask
yeah,
kids.
I mean, what's that?
Said ask kids.
Oh,
They'll
yeah.
give you an honest
Oh,
answer. Adults want to save your feelings, tell you it's great, they like it, even if they're like, I have no interest at all. Kids tell you this is stupid. Why didn't you make Fortnite, dummy?
I mean, that feedback isn't overly useful either.
But you know what I mean. They'll tell you what's wrong with it.
They will be blunt.
They'll be very specific about all of the things that you've done wrong and things that you need to address.
If it's boring,
it's a lot more valuable. Right?
Yeah. I mean, that's actually feedback is a big topic, because it is so important and impactful if done right, but harmful if done wrong, I think. I've done a fair amount of this with board games, designing tabletop games. And in that world, when you're getting feedback, it's the same problem. You're working with people who generally like board games, which means that sometimes they'll just tell you how they liked it, that, oh, it was great. But what you really have to do is watch things like their behavior while they're playing. So, there's small things like, did they look at their phone when it was somebody else's turn, or were they engaged with someone else's turn? So there's probably some similarities with video games. Like, how did they react when they died? Did they try to start again, or did they say, oh, I died, okay, well, that's cool, and end it? Did they ask to keep playing? Like, if you take it to a meetup and people want to keep playing it, are people watching somebody else playing it? If not, is there another game that people are, and what's the difference between are people watching that game but nobody's watching your game? And can you try to glean out the things you're missing, or the things that are turning people off, and figure that out? So a lot of the behavioral aspects that people won't tell you about directly are perhaps more important than what they do tell you.
Oh yeah, watching people is huge. Back at SOE, we had a playability lab, and they say cameras on the screen, and like, it's really interesting to watch someone play a game and just see from their face when they kind of fell off, when they lost interest, but they're still playing because there's so much time that we're asking them to play. But it's also fun to see that the moment when you've nailed it and they get that, like, that shimmer in their eye, or that expression that you're like, all right, cool, this part was great. What part is that they're on? So like, it is definitely fun to, like, or interesting to watch. It's both. It's interesting and fun to watch someone play from that aspect, and just watch their facial expressions, versus just watching someone play the game directly. Which is probably it's part of the reason why watching a streamer play a game, with their face on the screen, it can be pretty interesting, and all this like reaction stuff that people love so much, because like, if it's like a genuine reaction, it can say a lot in a moment. You don't need words, you don't need anything. You just need an eyebrow to go up, or just a quick smirk on the face, to realize, okay, well, that part was good. Why was that good? Or just the rage, a moment of rage, a moment of frustration. Okay, that's not good. Let's figure out what that is, and figure out why that happened, and see if anyone else did the same thing at that point. So it's all just like a lot of data points and stuff, but it's just interesting because it's just facial reactions, or just body language. So which I find like hugely interesting when it comes to the science of interaction, especially when it comes to video games.
Yeah, it's interesting watching people play stuff, especially when you're doing it in the creepy spy ways, where you can see where they're looking on the screen, the eye tracking and stuff. You're like, oh, they're looking at that piece, that thing. Yeah. But it definitely gives you some insight. I think the number one thing, though, that Andrew mentioned was just people wanting to play again, right? When people want to play more, when you're like, okay, it's over, and they ask if they can play again, that's a good sign. When nobody does that, it's a very bad sign. It means you should probably consider making some big changes. So I guess after the vertical slice, so you go through your design process, and then I guess next up you do some prototyping, right? As we kind of like loosely talked about that. And the prototyping would be before the vertical slice. So going through and just figuring out if the idea is fun.
Prototyping is going to be all over.
Okay.
You should, if you want to put in an idea, you're generally going to prototype it regardless. So, I mean, even after the vertical slice, if you decide to add something new, or even if you want to change something that was in there, you want to prototype that change. I mean, it's good practice. It can be somewhat time consuming, depending on your resources and when you want to release, if you have, a bunch of pressure to get things out. But in a perfect world, you would prototype pretty much anything. Because you obviously want the quality of the end result to be high. And how can you determine that without, going through the scientific process? You have to try it out and see if it works. And also on top of that, you want a prototype for, the more technical reasons, figuring out the best way to do this, make it the most performant, make it the most responsive, things like that are all part of prototyping. The fireball works, right? And this probably goes to Jason's point also, is that in that vertical slice, your fireball is representative. It's not in any way final. You may rewrite it, you may change it out, because it does need to be more performant. It needs to have more of an impact. It needs to be more responsive when you press the button. You may want to add some post cast control with the controller where you can move it left and right gradually. Like that's addition, and you would prototype that particular change to see how it feels, because you are now actually changing gameplay somewhat and the strategy behind how you put things in and how players would interact with your world.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like to just prototype out like a single thing and then start from there and then kind of kick off that vertical slice. What about you, Andrew?
What's the difference between, I guess behind the scenes, the difference between vertical slice, prototype, and the project you intend to eventually be your final project? I guess vertical slice, you can just fake everything, just as long as it feels like, okay, this is the concept I'm testing. Prototype is what? How does that differ from the project you're working on, just not fleshed out all the way?
I mean, a prototype is so a vertical slice is probably going to also have like visually be representative of what you would want something to look like. Prototype is like all white box. Like the fireball is just a cube. Like it's just you like you're jumping without animations. You're like a prototype is literally just the basic functionality and getting it to work and seeing how it feels from that point of view, without all of the pressure of the visual fidelity, the RL fidelity in some cases, if you are making a game where sound is a significant portion of it. So you have to, I mean, prototype it's basic, it's primal. It is you by yourself. You don't need to know anything else outside of your discipline. That, we'll use design as the example. You are getting into Unity or whatever engine you're using, and you are just making a fireball go. You are making a projectile move when I press a button, and that's it. That's basically you're prototyping that setup. The vertical slice is something that you are showing to someone and getting an opinion on. A vertical slice, because of the way humans work, it's hard for me. If you put me in a white room with, when I press a button, I shoot like a black cube, and it makes, another cube blow up into a bunch of little tinier cubes. While that is gameplay, that isn't a vertical slice. It's not representative of the visuals of your game. It's not representative of the sound of your game. It's certainly not representative of the animations or anything like that. It is just press button and this thing happen. So a vertical slice is, like it's multiple layers of a cake. Your cake's going to have the frosting and everything on it. It's going to be fully cooked, and that's what it is. You should theoretically be able to take a vertical slice. If you were going to a publisher or something to try to sell them your game, you should be able to take a vertical slice and have them play it or show it to them and use that as a basis for them to fund your product. You're not doing that with a prototype, but again, the language can get mixed. Someone could definitely say this is a prototype of my game and it's a vertical slice. Like the two don't necessarily like just work together, but like I said, I can say that a vertical slice is basically a bunch of things that you've prototyped and they're representative of what you want, and they're just kind of put together to say this is Andrew's game. This is what it would look like. This is an example of an experience. But again, after that vertical slice is probably not a part of your game. It is something that's thrown away, but the parts themselves are brought back together to make the beginnings, middle, and end of your product. And then
it is part of it. Is the prototype thrown away as well? Or is that like if I've got, you know, a sphere for my fireball and it blows up, do I then say, okay, cool, this mechanic's working well, I'm going to replace the sphere with an actual particle effect, or, you know, at some point throw in this?
And the prototype is foundation, then you grow from there, you know. So you make that first fireball, you decide, okay, this is good. This is representative of what a fireball would be, but like that is probably not going to be the actual fireball in game. You'd probably just use that as a reference. And then, okay, now let me make actual fireball. And here we go. And the reference is nice because if you want to diddle with any of that in the future, you're not like messing with final product stuff. So you have a basis thing that's separated from everything else that you can then go and mess with and experiment with some more without messing with a final product or what's more final of a product. And, you know, ideally there's some way to integrate, you know, if you change the logic for how a particular type of ability works, for example, ideally there's some way for that those changes that prototype can be propagated up to the other stuff. But either way, you want to keep the prototype separate so that you can mess with it in the future. And it's everything else just kind of looks back and says, okay, this is where I came from. And like, here's what I actually am now.
So you might copy code from the prototype, but you'll keep them separate, as I think yours in the chat was saying, keep it in a separate project from your actual game project.
Yeah. That's what I would do. I mean, not everyone operates the same. I like to keep things kind of separate, and just because, you know, if I want to go back and mess with something, I don't want to have to worry about the oh crap, I changed this thing here, it messed up all the stuff down here. Now I actually got to decouple these things. I like to keep things in boxes and structured in a way that I can just jump to this thing and know that I'm focused on this thing. Even with the vertical slice, like I would keep my vertical slice around and just go in and mess with it. Because then you have a perfect playground for what is your final product. So now you once again, your example of the two scenes you can walk back and forth it's a great idea. Because then once you get everything built, or you want to build something new or add something new, you just have this ground where you can just do it. And you don't have to rebuild anything. You don't have to go back and change stuff. You can just add to it or take away from it and see how things feel. And then you can just give that to someone who may have given you feedback before, and just say, here, just try it again. There's a new build, you know, just drop in the same spot and see and tell me what you think.
Yeah, I tend to not separate my stuff.
What's that?
I tend to not separate my stuff and end up slowly morphing and turning it in from a prototype into a slice. Just out of habit. I think it's part of the refactoring. Go ahead.
I like having an attractive thing to be working with. So I started with the asset store, you know, way back in the day. I was like, let me just get this box, and now I've got a treasure box. Great, you know, just buying whatever. So much free stuff. But now I'm like, okay, well, you know, the Nature Manufacturers demo scenes are great for prototyping for me because they're a pre-built world. It's an environment. It looks nice. When I'm streaming or putting a thumbnail up, people click on that more than a white box. It makes me feel better. And so I do wonder, like, maybe people in the chat can say what they think. Is it, you know, it seems more efficient to use white boxes and just quickly put out, you know, boxes, especially with somebody mentioned the Cincy prototype asset where it's just a bunch of essentially boxes pre-made for you. And I know Unity has a bunch of those as well. Do you prefer to do that, or do you prefer to work with something that is prettier so that when you're testing that fireball out, there is some particle? You know you're going to change the particle later, but it's a fireball you got from the asset store, so it looks prettier.
I mean, it definitely depends. With all the basic shapes, like you can just build something that's like, it depends on what you're excited about. For me, like if I can jump into a scene from scratch and I can build out a functional white box, I mean, like I said, that goes back to kind of the hands-on, like personal challenge aspect. If I can build something representative with a bunch of basic shapes that has all the function, that's fun to me. I don't really care about what it looks like at that point, because that's not my area of expertise. I know what I might want to look like in my mind. what the art style might be, things like that. But you know, once I get to that point, if I'm on the asset store and I want some like stylized fantasy, then I'm gonna look for that on the asset store, and I'm gonna go through that, and I'm gonna find examples of what I want. The problem with for me, if I'm starting from scratch, is when I go to the asset store and I grab someone's other thing, I now have to clean that stuff up, which is taking away from my time to just prototype and build something, get something functional. The key thing there is that you want to get something working and see how it feels first. If you spend a bunch of time, it could be a little bit of time depending on how easy it is to import a package and clean things up here and there. But ultimately, in the grand scheme of things, if your focus is purely on function and feel, then then I would just use basic shapes. You can build a level, you can build interactions, you can build all these things with basic shapes that are just as a part of Unity. So you can just make those shapes. Um, uh, but again, if someone has like an asset store package of just a bunch of like white box assets that you can just incorporate, that would be like, that's huge. But if it's something that's already like a bunch of art that's already built that has a bunch of things that you have to remove or just do to incorporate them into your scene, that's just extra work. And now you are kind of beholden to whatever they did for you or whatever they're selling, versus just kind of being free form and finding out what you actually want to do. And then once you have that established, then you can, incorporate these other things, these visuals, this audio stuff, the particles, things like that. But again, it depends on what you want to do. If you want to make a really cool particle for your fireball, then starting from scratch to particle, or starting as an example particle, that's a whole nother, you could almost argue that's also almost a prototype for you too. You are now focused on the effects function versus the fireball and your spell function. You're now focused on this thing. Now, okay, I got these two prototypes. Let me put them together. I now have a vertical slice of my fireball, just to kind of bring it all home. So it really is just about whatever you're focused on. I am 100% fine working with just basic shapes, but like I said, human beings are human beings. We are all, to varying degrees, very visually oriented. So it is, if I'm working with someone, and they are someone who's more visual, then we might go down that road when it comes to prototyping. But it really, just me personally, like, I am totally fine with just basic shapes, because I am excited about getting the function working. I'm excited about the ball hitting the cube and the cube exploding into a bunch of smaller cubes. That in itself is fulfilling, because I know after that, now it just needs to look good, because I got the gameplay down, which is, theoretically the most important part. And you look at games like Undertale and things like that are visually not super exciting. If you want to compare it to, they're stylized, I guess, but ultimately it's not super exciting. And you look at anyone who likes looking at older games or playing older games, there's a reason they're playing those older games. They're not playing them because they, like modern times, they look like super great. At the time they might have, or they did. But they're playing them because the gameplay, that's what keeps them coming back to play it, or to experience it, is the gameplay itself. My favorite game of all time, well, there's two of them, FF6, Final Fantasy 6, and Chrono Trigger. And, I can pick up Chrono Trigger and play it anytime. It doesn't matter. The game is aged. It's a 16-bit game. It hasn't been remastered or anything like that. And I tell you, it's one of the greatest game experiences, period. And no one's even come close to reproducing it. And I can keep playing it over and over and over again because the gameplay itself is so solid. You can say the same thing about old Mario games, things like that, where they don't visually look like the best nowadays, but the gameplay is just super solid. And that's because it started as a white cube in a box with a dude jumping and breaking blocks. So like it actually, there's man, I gotta find this this book, but there's a Zelda book they released. Oh man, like I think about 4 years ago. For a limited time, they had it free digital, and so for Breath of the Wild, um, what they did, because Zelda has this legacy and all these different iterations, they actually built a prototype for Breath of the Wild using the original Zelda style. So when they wanted to like do things like fire an arrow through fire, have it catch on fire and burn a bush, they actually did a vertical slice using the original Zelda 8-bit engine to show off the things they want to do. And the reason they did that is because it's easy for them to put those things together and iterate super fast and just build these different concepts they wanted to put in Zelda for Breath of the Wild. Like it's huge to like do something kooky like that. But in that case, they actually their white box assets are just established things that they had over years and years and years. So they could just throw together and just make a thing. So there was no time at all. They didn't spend a bunch of time in the Breath of the Wild engine putting these together and trying to. They just said, "Hey, we've got basically this flat space. Let's just throw some ideas together and see how it feels." So like stuff like that, like that's the type of stuff that I think is pretty exciting, and it's easy for me to just like in my brain just go, okay, well that's a bush, it's a cube, that's an arrow, it's just a cylinder, and I'm firing it, and it just has motion and it has inertia and has all these properties that I get to mess with, and I get to mess with them freely. I don't have to worry about, oh crap, now I've got some error here because I have to set up an art this way, I have to do this, that, and the other. I can just free form, get it done, and then move on from there.
Yeah, for me, I like to put stuff in pretty early. I feel like I'm more like Andrew, where like I'll get the functionality working, get it prototyped out with. Usually, what I'll stick with is like cubes and spheres and stuff, just really simple primitives. And then after it's working, I'll start grabbing assets and slapping them in and just putting them over because it makes it easier for me to kind of keep track and visualize. But it does end up wasting a bit of time. So I try to be really cautious about not spending more than like 5 minutes on swapping out a model and not getting stuck spending an hour or two searching through assets and trying to find the perfect tank or the perfect building or something. So I'll go find something that just kind of fits and slap it in there. And then when I get bored later and I don't need to write code or do anything complex, I'll start looking for random other assets and stuff. But I think I'm probably like the other people that struggles to visualize things. I also have a hard time just visualizing things without seeing them myself. So like I'm picturing what something's going to look like without seeing it. Even like when I lay out my background and stuff, I have to set up the camera, see the shot, move things around, move things, keep looking at it, and constantly be seeing it to have any idea like where things are going to go or how stuff's going to go. And the same with my game stuff. I really struggle to visualize it in advance for some reason. My wife can do it. A lot of other people can do it. I seem to not have that skill at all. Like just knowing what something's going to look like. I can't picture it when I close my eyes.
I'm trying to find this game. I mean, I have the thing here, the 2D Zelda prototype. Yeah, I can. It's called The Legend of Zelda: A Complete Development History. But I have the PDF here, and like it's just a shot of it's basically in the engine, and Link's like lifting up a little leaf. Like it's great. I'm a big Zelda fan, so like reading this is just like, oh my god, this is so. I wish I had like this pedigree or series of games where I could just do this. But yeah, I'll. So just
looks like it's up here on Reddit. There's a link to it here.
Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah,
is this the one?
I'm not sure if they kept it free.
You can grab a free ebook at the Legend of Zelda wiki. I don't know if this is it.
I can't zoom in.
Here, I'll put the link into the YouTube chat too.
Complete development.
That way everybody can check it out and see if it's
Yep, that's it.
If it's the one you're talking about.
That's it.
Okay, cool. Well, everybody can go check that thing out. All right, I dropped the link in there. Before we talk about other things, I just want to beg everybody to hit the thumbs up button and go share the video real quick. Go share the stream on Facebook or Instagram or MySpace or TikTok. No, you can't share it on TikTok. What are things people can share streams on now?
Probably share on TikTok.
Can I see some Jason TikTok videos? You got a life hack for us?
No, it's just going to be me dancing.
How to eat bananas?
No, you would like to see that one. Oh, so gotta come by sometime, man. It's been too long. Or maybe I'll have to come out there and visit you soon.
I mean, you can come up north. I'll be back in Texas in September, and then I'm not sure what we're doing for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So maybe we'll be in San Diego.
Maybe we'll just be at Disneyland.
Oh God! Don't even get me started on Disneyland, please.
Don't get you started on Disneyland.
Let's talk about more prototyping, please.
Well, every time I go to Disneyland now, I get really distracted looking around for Unity installs on stuff. I'm like, I wonder if that's running Unity, like, because they have all these interactive things everywhere now. It's like interactive displays and screens and stuff. I'm like, I wonder what engine they used for that. Is that Unreal or Unity or something else? Like, what did they build it in? Like, and I just get curious about all of them. I know, like, some of them have been built in Unity. I've talked to some people who worked on some of the rides, and some of the stuff was built in Unity that they were working on. So I just get distracted, kind of curious, wondering what's all this stuff made in? Like, what's that process like? I mean, I have a good idea of what they go through building those things out, but it's got to be kind of interesting when you're building one out that's going into a theme park that's going to be seen by, billions of people or hundreds of millions of people.
What do you think the ratio is? How much do you think UE5 or even Unity is used for basic interaction stuff like that?
My guess is probably not too much, and that most of it is just like video. Like the majority of it is just video and switching between like what video is playing, right? But there are some things like the more interactive ones with lots of touch screens and stuff, that at least there were quite a few of those popping up before COVID stuff. And then like the new rides, like the new Star Wars ride is interactive. I assume that's built in some game engine. I'm not sure which one. Probably one of the two, Unreal or Unity, because it's got multiple inputs and it's actually relatively dynamic. It's actually like a game. It's a 6-player game in a simulator. So I assume some of the, I don't know what percentage though. My guess though is that it's probably like 95% video and just like looping videos that are playing that make it seem interactive or that switch when you hit a button. And then that maybe 5% is actually running on some interactive software that's more complex. I mean, there's a benefit of just keeping it video if you can. Like, there's no risk, right? It's super simple. It's easy. It's stable, and it's going to work, and you don't have to worry about it. If it's running on software, like operating systems update, other stuff changes, networking shit happens, things break, and it's a lot more fragile. And not that it'd be super fragile. I assume those things are relatively offline and isolated, but still, it's more fragile than a video.
Yeah, it's actually an interesting question. I'm wondering if we could actually find out.
Smuggler's Run is Unreal. That's the Millennium Falcon ride. It's Unreal for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe right now is video, but I would bet that as Disney and other theme parks update their stuff, more and more will be, Unity based and Unreal. But probably I would guess a lot of the smaller interactions would be Unity based rather than Unreal, due to Unreal is really focused on the game, making games, where Unity has a lot of focus on non-game applications, on gamification of just general interaction, and I guess the trick is the interaction they have between their own hardware, like their Magic Bands and Disney World, and all the various things that they have. So if you do buttons here, something happens over there, and with mechanical things.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I think it'd be fun to to work on some of those projects. I'm sure those people have a lot of fun doing that stuff. And like for the people who haven't seen it, the Smugglers Run one Andrew's talking about, it's this 6-person simulator that you go into. So it's like, imagine you're going into a
lot of
star,
fun.
or I guess it's what's that?
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like it's Boba Fett's ship, right? You're going into, if I remember right.
No, Han Solo,
No,
the Millennium Falcon.
You're in a.
Oh, was it Han Solo's? I've lost track.
Yeah,
It's
you're
been
in a
too
Millennium
long.
Falcon. You're in a Corellian cruiser or whatever. Or no, is it the Falcon? I think it is
It's the Falcon. Yeah,
It doesn't look like the Falcon. It looks different. Anyway, you go in this
inside of it. What do
6-person
you mean it doesn't
spaceship,
look
and
like the
there's
Falcon. You're in the cockpit.
when you're inside, that's not what
you,
the seats look
Millennium
like.
Falcon expert? Do you have
They-
one in your
they-
backyard?
Yeah.
They needed 6 seats, so they add more seats.
And I show you my entire Star Wars section.
Oh,
I'm just kidding.
okay. Yeah. All right, Jason Solo. Gotcha.
I'm just kidding. I don't know shit about the inside of a Falcon, but I just assumed it was something else because the Falcon's on the outside.
Han Weimann. Gotcha.
But anyway, you go in and controlling the movement of the spaceship with a lever, like the one, basically like each axis is on a different person and a different lever. So one person's controlling the pitch and the yaw, there's another person, and there's another person shooting the guns and shooting the rockets, and then there's an engineer position for like your mom or grandma. So they just sit back and push a button every now and then. It just like lights up. It's like, hey, push the button when it lights up. That's where
one
the
of the
first
times I
in your
went
mom.
through, I was pushing that button. What are you calling me, a grandpa?
Yeah, you're basically Grandpa Salim. Okay, give you the easy job because it's a video game. They want to make sure you don't mess it up. Just got to push the matching button, Grandpa. But it's a lot of fun because it all happens like on the screen in the simulator. You're flying around and battling whoever you're battling there. I forget. You're going to steal some stuff, some smuggling crap. I haven't seen the new ride yet, though. I have to check that thing out.
Oh yeah, last time I was there, actually we were there together. I didn't get on the wait list for that, and then COVID happens between then and now.
Yeah, last time we were there, we got on it and then got sick.
It was Rise
and
of
all
Resistance,
the kids
right?
got to go on it.
Yeah, Rise of Resistance is that one. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Sounds
interesting. So, I don't know. Do you guys want to talk more about game dev process stuff, or do you want to start taking a couple questions?
It's up to you, man. This is your.
Well, I guess first
you're driving the car.
Before we take questions, when you get into your building your vertical slice, how do you guys start? Like what was kind of the kickoff process for that? Like what's let's say somebody's at the part where like they've got the idea, they've loosely prototyped it out, they think that they might know what they want to do. How do you make that jump to the actual vertical slice? Like what's the next step?
I'm very linear when it comes to this stuff. So I think for Legend of the Stones, the first thing I did was open up a demo scene from Nature Manufacturer and say, okay, I need to move. So starting with player movement or camera movement, because this is a party-based game, so you're moving the camera. I need movement, so I started with that. And then I was like, oh, I need character portraits down here because I need character portraits. So I was like, I need characters. I need to make a character creation scene. Because for me, being very linear and really kind of skipping the vertical slice to some degree and definitely skipping the prototype with gray boxes, I say, okay, well, I need a character in my portraits, and in order to have a character in my portraits, I need characters, so I need to create my character creation scene before I can do that. And so what I end up doing is, and if you watch my streams, you'll see me doing this. I did it just the other day. I'll say, I'm going to work on this, and I'm going to move forward, and I'm going to realize, oh, wait, there's something else I need, and in order to do that, I need to go over here and work on this other thing first. And once I get that, I'll come back, embed this new component, this new mechanic into this other system I was working on, so I can take that next step forward. But it's very linear, and you don't have to do it like this. Yeah. That's for sure.
So, I mean, as far as vertical slice goes, I mean, you just have to think about what it is. It is a representative slice of your game. So, what goes into a vertical slice is, representation of all the aspects of your game working together. You're just creating an ecosystem that is all the systems interactions for your product. Now, character creation I wouldn't include in the vertical slice unless like that actually could be a vertical slice of its own, because character creation is, you know, a big UX thing. It's very visual, obviously. So that is a whole big system, depending on the game, obviously, depending on how much functionality you put in it. If it's a pay-to-play game or a game that has microtrans and the visuals are a big part of that, then obviously you're going to spend a chunk of time outside of making gameplay related to that. So that in itself is almost a whole nother project that just links to the game, which also can cause some issues depending on the visual fidelity. If you have a lot of physics and stuff like that with ropes flowing and how that interacts and clipping and all that crazy stuff. So that's a whole nother aspect, because that actually can affect how your animations work and things like that. So that's like a huge thing. But as far as like a vertical slice, selling an action game, you know, we're doing a lot of parkour or jumping around or whatever, or shooting fireballs, my favorite spell apparently. I wouldn't say character creation would be a part of that necessarily, unless those selections, like if you had some notion of posture or something like that affecting how you move and things like that, that may be a part of how you built your character. Then maybe that flow into that and how you're letting people know about posture as a part of their creation flow might be a part of your vertical slice, because that is actually related to gameplay. But for me, the vertical slice is all about the different aspects of gameplay, how they work together, customization as it relates to impacting the player interacting with the world. A part of that definitely is visual. But if I'm a vertical slice, I'm going to choose, you know, the best looking version of my models, a male, female representation, or whatever other race or gender it might be there. And let people select between those two with a very basic interaction as far as a front flow. And then just let them jump into a scene with some direction. If it's an open world, then maybe there is no direction. It's just, hey, go here, put two sticks together and make gun. And that's it. But yeah, it's really just like literally just like a snapshot of here is all things working together. All systems are talking to each other, all giving each other a thumbs up, hitting all those like buttons. We need you to do it too. That's basically that was for you, Jason. That's basically.
I know. Thank you. Did I show you my thumb, by the way?
What's that?
Not to distract, but I got that one right there.
What?
My beautiful thumbs up.
Your thumb. I can't. What do you?
You can't see it on the screen?
Geez, hang on.
You can't see the thumb that I'm pointing?
I don't. Everybody else. The golden thumb. Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's
all lit up.
Did you prototype that?
I actually did. First, I put it up there, and then I moved it, and I was going to put it on a shelf, and then I saw that shiny ball, and I was like, you know, if I put it in front of this shiny ball, it'll actually be visible. It's just like silver. And there it worked. That was my prototyping and my vertical slice there. There are some questions coming in. I figured we could hit a few of them. And the first one was for Salim, which is perfect because I need to step away for half a second. And it was, can we talk about implementing story in a game? Salim talked about Zelda, and Nintendo is notorious for making story second to the gameplay. I'm curious how he approaches it. So just on how you approach putting story into a game in general. And I mean, Andrew, you're kind of doing this too, right? I assume that's part of your plan. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about this for half a second, and I'll be right back while everybody hears the awesome answer that I missed.
I don't know if it'll be awesome, but it's somewhat of a open, like a super broad question. I mean, it depends on what I'm working on. I mean, I work on a live product. And when it comes to like doing a next release, story is, you know, basically a guide for us, and how it's it kind of makes the path for how we want to introduce things and what we might want to introduce. And how we tell that story is done through, whatever gameplay aspects, whatever experiences we put the players in. So it just depends on type of game. If you're making like a heavily story-driven game, then of course, if you're making a adventure game or something like that, then story is a big part of that, because you got to establish story. Then you got to establish, where you want to challenge a player or put them in a situation where they have to make a choice. Is it a brand? Is it a story that you want to have branching and multiple endings, things like that? So you have to kind of map that out, which would definitely go back to the whiteboard thing I mentioned earlier of, what is my game and what isn't it? Is it a heavily story-driven game? Okay, if it's a heavily story-driven game, then the story has to, drive it. And everything that I do after that decision all has to come back to the story that I'm telling. And how are you telling that story? Is it atmospheric? I mentioned Ender Lilies earlier, and I've mentioned like games like Hollow Knight, these Metroidvania type games that tell a story without like forcing you to read text or anything like that. It's just the atmosphere, the world itself, and the gameplay. The different things that you pick up, the story of the sword that you described, and that you do a bunch of crazy stuff. Why does it let you do a bunch of crazy stuff? Because it's got the spirit of this soldier in it. And then as you go through the game more, the name of that soldier is mentioned more and more and more, and you find out in the end why this sword works this way and why this soldier is so significant, because he's just randomly being mentioned in these other diaries or things like that throughout the game. So you've told this story without like really telling it, but this story is like hugely foundational for how you developed your product. So it really is just like you have to at the beginning decide, I want the story to be the spotlight here. And if that's the case, then pretty much everything you do, from a system creation to scene or experience creation, it all has to keep that in mind as a number one thing. And then of course, how you're telling the story. I mean, like I said, an atmospheric game can be story driven. But the game has to kind of bleed the story, visual storytelling. And like I said, little things, tiny pieces of information on items, on movement, even your enemies, things that they say, all of that stuff can be a part of the story that you're telling. And then of course, standard things like cutscenes and stuff like that can bring it all together. So, I mean, it depends on, to get back to the core question, implementing, how do I go about it? It definitely just depends on what I'm making, and how I want to tell that story. And that ranges from standard, missions, standard kind of MMO style quests, to, just what is this environment telling me? You look at Dark Souls or games like that, there is a rich amount of lore and story that someone sat down and wrote and uses as foundation for everything, all the level design, all the characters, all the bosses, all these things. And they managed to do it and tell you a story without you realizing you were being told a story, without forcing you to read paragraphs and paragraphs of things. But on top of that, they compelled you to look outside of the game to find that story, to see what other people had gleaned from playing, and to find what has actually written, what the actual story is. So that's a huge advantage to that type of storytelling, and I'm a huge fan of it. But there's also a case for, here's a book, read this. First king started 1800 yada yada, and they established this, that, and the other, and that is why this kingdom is this way. Go forth and read another book. So it just depends on the type of game that you're trying to make.
A lot of games now, like if we compare NES games, Zelda, you have to sit on the screen for a while in order to see the story, I think. And then the first thing you get is, here's a sword, it's dangerous, go take a sword. If you go in the cave, which most people do, but if you know, and that's the story. You know, there's a story there, but that's it. Of course, now we can tell more detailed stories. And I think for a while, one of the things that frustrated me about, you know, some of the Final Fantasy games that were coming out, Final Fantasy VII, I think was the first one, with like 30 minutes of cinematics before you even get to start playing the game. Because now developers could make cinematics. So now all of a sudden it was like, oh, let's just show this whole story with this beautiful cinema. And it was, you know, a different experience. So now we have the choice as developers. We can choose whether we want our game to be straight up a story that you experience, and you know, the decisions you're making aren't really changing anything. You're experiencing a character's story, and you're just playing the mechanics of getting the character from here to there, but the story is their story that you're watching and experiencing, helping them along with. Versus I think what you're getting at with Dark Souls is there's a story that you're discovering, that you're sort of like unwrapping, that you're peering behind the scenes that you might, if you don't pay attention, you won't get. And then you can go even further and say, okay, some games could be the player is writing the story. Now, lots of branches, maybe some, you know, interactions that if you do this, you won't find this whole other thing. So the story is your story. And then, of course, other games where there's no real story. It's just the save the princess or save the kingdom, and or, you know, no story at all. Or a game like you know, Threes, where story doesn't make any sense.
Well, I mean, it's funny because like a lot of games, you know, like Save the Princess or you know, like something like Ghouls and Ghosts, right? You know, Ghouls and Ghosts because Ghouls and Ghosts is a notoriously difficult and challenging game. And when you finish it the first time, they ask you to play it again to actually beat it. But, you know, there's story. There's story. Someone wrote a story for that, and they actually enjoyed and were devoted to the story that they're telling. It may be a super simple story, but you know, but you know, out of it came a game that was fun and challenging. But there's still story there. You know, when it comes to Dark Souls, I think, like to your point, the thing about Dark Souls is it's almost two stories. It is the avatar of the player is discovering a story while playing out their story. So it's the story of a story. It's a story of how you the player discovered what happened here, and then how you resolve that, or how you get through to the other side of things. But you know, with today's game space, and you know, just like the proliferation of open world stuff, excuse me, they're like, you can just make a game, a sandbox, and there just is no story, or the story is like super light. You crashed on a planet, you know, Subnautica, like there is story there, and there is story to discover, but it is, you crash landed, and now you got to figure out some shit. That's it. Like, I don't know what's going on. Oh, wait, I found this other escape pod, and there's, oh, this guy's talking about the underwater life. Like, it's all like mysterious and has a certain progress, but I could never discover that. I can actually just load the game and play open box mode and never even experience a story. So like it definitely, like, today's games are storytelling is interesting, to say the least. But then you got games like Mass Effect, which is, you know, obviously heavily story driven, a lot of things to read, but also a lot of cool interactions, and you know, obviously you're taking advantage of facial gestures and things like that to get across emotion and stuff like that, and all the VO and the cut scenes, and then the moment to moment stuff. It all kind of goes together. There's a lot of stuff to read. Oh my God, there's so much stuff to read. That unfortunately I just end up not doing.
Most people don't, right?
Well,
I've looked at the data before. People, when you give them lots of text, they stop reading it.
Well, I just rely on interactions with other people who have played to see what they've picked up on, and kind of like over time, you know, I gain a knowledge of certain things, or when I play through again, I stop and look and, oh crap, I didn't notice that before, but now I do. I think in that case, to your point, Jason, you probably do get more when you just play again. You don't necessarily need to read a bunch of stuff. But when you play again, you might notice something that you didn't notice before, and that helps to kind of expose more of the story to you through gameplay. But yeah, like journals and journals and journals of multi-page text. If it's like a bunch of journals and they're just like quick diary entries or something like that, a paragraph here or there that just has like, it's just filled with just like hints and like just kind of cliffhangery type writing, that you're like, oh man, I gotta find the second entry of this page because what's going on here? Like that type of stuff is super compelling, and you can build on the screen, and just let people read through it and go past it really quick. If it's written well enough, someone who's even glancing at it, blah 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 blah, they'll see like a name here or there, then they'll pick up something else that has to say, oh wait. Let me go back to the other thing that I read earlier. Oh wow, this is related to this, and then you'll see like a boss name, and the boss's name is what's mentioned in the texts just randomly. It's just a word that you remember. That'll compel you to go back and read. But because they're short, you can actually digest them, and get some cool story out of it. Meanwhile, the person who wrote that story there's probably pages and pages and pages and pages of lore that
they got a
wrote.
Bible of
but they didn't
stuff.
they decided to just take these parts and kind of get you interested and tell the story through different things in the game, which I think is
assuming
excellent.
they did a good job, they trimmed it down, right?
Yep.
They didn't just put the whole thing in there. The other thing I like is when it's got voiceovers, so when it goes through and it kind of like reads it out loud for me, so I don't have to read through the text and get a little bit better idea of what the character is that's reading it, or like who wrote the thing.
Oh yeah, the emotion,
that character's voice and inflection and stuff. I feel like it adds a little bit more, makes it more likely that I'll go through them all. If they have voice and audio, I'll go through and listen to all of them. If they're text, it depends, right? It varies a lot. But again, that's probably just me. There was a question that popped up, and then there was an answer right below it. And I just thought it would be good to pop this one up in front of you, because you would probably have like a dozen and a half answers. And it said, why are there no good online multiplayer beat 'em up games? And then right below that was, you mean like Castle Crashers, and Streets of Rage has 2-player online. I assume that there are quite a few different ones.
Are they saying beat 'em up, or are they saying like the beat 'em up? When I read that, I'm thinking like fighting games, not. But you're talking about beat 'em up games. Yeah, I mean, well, I guess online specifically, you're talking about like Dungeon Fighter Online, I think is the only like online. If you're talking about like kind of map,
I'm talking about multiplayer.
Oh, just multiplayer. I think I mean, Castle
Crashers multiplayer
is
that's not local multiplayer.
Castle Crashers is probably like the one that I would reference for sure. Streets of Rage, I didn't realize. Is it Streets of Rage 4 is online?
That's what it says. Streets of Rage 4 has 2-player online.
Oh, cool. I always think of Streets.
I didn't know if there was anything else you knew about in that genre that you might want to recommend.
I mean, Scott Pilgrim. Oh wait, yeah, Scott Pilgrim I think is online multiplayer, or it might just be couch multiplayer. Scott Pilgrim's pretty fun. But I mean, to your point, I don't know. It depends on what you're also saying is a good beat 'em up. I mean, as long as it's fun. Like, I mean, I think they just re-release like TMNT, the old arcade one that's 4-player. I thought that you could play that online, or they added that. But it just
when they did for like the arcade ones.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just like talking about a beat 'em up that's just like mindless, like Golden Axe style, I think there's a plenty out there. It just depends on what you're.
Turtles is a lot of fun too.
What's that?
The Turtles is definitely a lot of fun.
Oh yeah,
it's one of the few arcade things I thought like would actually be a lot of fun to have. The one that gets a lot of use now is Street Fighter.
The old
X-Men versus Street Fighter is the one people play.
Oh no, not the fighting game. The X-Men 4-player beat 'em up arcade game.
Oh, that would be a
good
one.
Is fun as hell.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
The Simpsons,
would be a good one to put on there.
running around with the damn vacuum, margin of vacuum. Oh God, so good. But there's like old, like there's an old D&D, I think 4-player beat 'em up game, arcade game that's super fun. And then there's the Willow game is fun as hell too. The Willow arcade game. Oh man, there's a level where you're on the back of the back of the wagon. Like, oh man, I got memories now. Stop.
Oh yeah.
Let's stop. Just stop. I'm gonna go buy these things now, please.
Yeah. Oh, once you move, I've got an arcade system you can take if you want.
Oh, sure.
You need an NBA Jam?
I'll take an NBA Jam, sure.
You can take the modded NBA Jam. I switched it in with the X-Men versus Street Fighter because the problem I ran into with the NBA Jam and the modding was it only has 3 buttons. So all of the games that I wanted to play and make and stuff required more than 3, like sometimes 4 or 6 or something. Gotcha. And I just couldn't do it with it. So, and I didn't really need 4 players. I loved NBA Jam as a kid, so I got that one. Yeah. But it's 4 players with 3 buttons each, and I really just needed 2 players with 6 buttons each. So I ended up switching to the X-Men versus Street Fighter, and people actually play it all the time. Even the toddlers love to come in and just play Street Fighter.
Versus Street Fighter.
Shoot fireballs.
X-Men versus Street Fighter is great. Original X-Men Children of the Atom is also fantastic, and Street Fighter Alpha 3. Probably my favorites.
It's fun stuff. The fighting games are a blast. I've got mine right over there just running right now, and I can see Bison versus Magneto fighting right now on the demo mode.
So ridiculous. Yeah.
So there was another question here on I'm new to Unity and coding. What's the best type of game to make if you're new to game development? And the answer to this, I've talked about this a couple times, is generally if you're just getting started trying to learn how to make games, make something that's a simple mobile clone. Like copy the simplest mobile game that you know of that's got a single mechanic like and start there and then slowly build up.
Yeah.
What's that?
Like popping bubbles or some shit like that. Something simple. Yeah.
Flappy Bird is a really good, easy one. I've done a bunch of tutorials on that because it just has a mechanic of jump. Like you tap things. Find things that have a single input and a single thing that you can do and use those as the starting point because you'll be able to get them done relatively quick and you'll be really unlikely to get stuck and not be able to finish it, and you'll learn quite a bit and be able to make the next one a lot faster and better. If you start with that small one, get it done in the first week and then move on to something a little bit bigger and something a little bit bigger and slowly ramp up, it's a lot easier that way. And that's definitely what I would recommend.
I generally sounds like prototyping. Like build something basic and then
almost it's just practicing, right? It's learning and intentional practice and learning and going finishing through the process of doing things. Yeah, you want to practice like start to end of a process. It's just like if you're practicing anything else, like you're practicing painting paintings, right? You're going to go through and do the whole painting. You're going to make one of them and do that. You're not going to try to make the best painting ever first, or you're building whatever it is out of wood, or I don't know, painting a building or any different type of thing that you could learn how to do. Like you want to start small and then slowly scale it up, I think.
I would add to that though that if you do have in your head the game you really want to make that you're not quite ready for, try to pick small projects that will lead you towards that. So if you're making like if you really want to do a 2D side scroller, then Flappy Bird would be a great way to start because it's 2D side scrolling, one mechanic, and then find another project that adds something else to your repertoire of things that you've done before. Yeah. And at some point you'll be like, all right, I've got most of what I need to do. I've got already. So let me make the game I want to make now.
Yeah, I definitely I think the concept of, hey, that's a really cool inventory system. I wonder how they made that. And making an inventory system because, hey, I might want an inventory system in my game is like a cool way to approach something. You don't necessarily have to do gameplay. You can just like look at different systems or something and see if you could recreate them. And then, publish them. Maybe you can sell them on the asset store or something like that.
Starting out, I wouldn't go that down to trying to sell an asset.
Well, yeah, that was
just starting out. Start with the fundamentals and build up to there.
Yeah. There's so much you don't know that you don't know at the start.
Yeah,
and that's I think part of the benefit of this is the mistake I made when I was working on the Barbarian. I should have done this first, but I didn't. And you end up learning too late that you did things wrong, or that there was a much better way of doing it that you would have figured out if you had just, started a little slower and focused on specifics rather than just saying, I'm going to make this game and I know how to do, I can save stuff with player pref, so I'm done with my saving system. That's
Hey
the
man,
mistake
you
I
released the
made.
game. You did more than a lot of people who start out
It's
did.
true.
So
That is true, but
yeah.
the saving system was terrible because I used
And it
player
gets you a
pref.
coffee a month. So there you go.
Two coffee per week.
Per
Coffee
week.
a week. Yes.
Oh,
Coffee a week.
Yeah, and a good week, maybe a big frappuccino.
Oh, nice,
So,
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other benefit of you doing these smaller projects is that you don't end up bogged down in your past work, right? Like if you work on just a single project, all of the decisions and things that you've learned or barely learned or started to learn kind of pile up into a mess, and it gets a lot harder to deal with. Where you're doing these new projects, throwing stuff away, you can try stuff with very minimal risk because your next project you're just going to start from scratch again and go through that again, but with the new learning and understanding of what you picked up from the last one, I guess. And somebody asked a question about Git. We ever make a video more on Git? I know the basics. The answer is probably no. I think there are a ton of good Git videos out there. There are probably other people that can do a Git video quite a bit better than I can, and they probably already exist. I don't know. I'll look. If anybody knows of a really good Git video that works well for Unity, though, please drop it in the chat because I'd be curious. If there's nothing, maybe I'll take a look at it, but my assumption is that there are already a couple of things out there that handle it really well. And the source control system used, like personally, I don't have a strong opinion on which one people should use, just that they should use some sort of source control, whatever it is, use something. Let's see, were there any other questions? There are probably quite a few. What are your thoughts on dots? Seems cool. I'm not using it for anything yet, so can't talk too much about it. I know a couple people who are, and one day we'll talk some more about it. I did a stream with Johnny about it, though. Check that one out. A couple episodes ago, like number 15 or so. And let's see. Oh, Salim, I have some questions for you. I'm going to ask in just a minute, too, about my beautiful game design.
Answer to number 1 is no. Answer to number 2 is nah. Answer to number 3 is okay. That's it.
It's okay.
Yeah.
There's lots of things popping up there, scrolling by so fast. Any tips for supporting events in scriptable objects? I wanted to pop this one up because I actually replied to a Facebook post about something very similar yesterday. Somebody using events through scriptable objects as a game eventing system, and I saw that Unity actually has a tutorial on this. Let me see if I can pull it up, where they show how to fire off and deal with events. Yep, there it is. I'm going to do a quick screen share, just show it, and then I'll drop the link down below. So they've got this nice little blog post here. I just dropped the link in there that goes through, and it talks about using scriptable objects for game events and passing in. I think that they do this with parameters. This may be a non-parameterized version of it, but essentially showing how to register and set up game events. I've done some videos on this too. There's one on the channel a couple of videos back. You can check that out too. I want to dig in a little bit deeper into that. Let's see. Unity able to make big games? Yeah. I don't know. Are there any other questions you wanted to pop up, or can I just start asking you about my game stuff real quick first? Here, you got nothing? I'll take a couple more of these, and then I'll hit you with it. So here, this one says, I've been coding in C# since 2014, and I'm about to leave Unity and start learning C to build my engine.
C?
Any tips for it?
Wait.
Yeah, apparently they're going to stop using Unity, start learning C, and build a new engine from scratch.
C? Why not C++?
I'm not completely sure. That I'm not sure either. Yeah, I would. I don't have any great tips on engine building other than make sure that you're doing it for a reason, that you've got like an actual goal in mind there, and you're not doing it just because you think that there's some benefit there isn't. I mean, there are benefits to it for sure. Did a video about this just a couple of days ago, actually.
Benefits to what?
But making your own engine and understanding how to build an engine, like writing actual engine code.
To going to C.
C++.
Oh no, not. I mean, there might be for engine building. There might be some that I don't know
C++.
about. I am not into engine building. Yeah. Okay, C++. Yeah. But yeah,
we were about to have a
I'd say the main thing is just making sure that you're doing it for a good reason. That you're doing it because you want to get into engine development and you want to learn that, or you want to work on somebody else's game engines at a company that does custom engine stuff, because that's really the skill that you're going to get there, right? And but outside of that, I wish I had some tips. I need to talk to somebody who's done some good engine development, have somebody hop on sometime. I'm sure I know quite a few people who've done it before. I just need to figure out who would want to hop on and just kind of chat about it and share their experiences and give some advice. I can think of a couple people who could probably do it, just to see if they're available. Any tips on creating a good, solid resume? Focus on what the company wants is number one. Like, make sure that your resume highlights what you can offer to the company, what you can bring to them, and why hiring you is a good idea. Don't focus on what you want. Don't tell them what you want. Nobody cares. And don't tell them a bunch of irrelevant things. Tell them things that are relevant to the actual business or work that you're doing. That's pretty much it. Focus on stuff that you've done. What's that?
So when you finish this, I want to go back to Micah.
Okay. Well, that was all my tips for that. Just So go ahead. What else? Main reason is to learn about it.
Yeah. So
about
you're in Unity now, learning C# for making.
Been doing it since 2014. So
are you trying to make a game, or because it's weird that if you're trying to currently, like, if you're learning to make a game, that you would stop learning how to make a game to build a game engine, to learn C++, not for making a game, but for because it's kind of a different, like, coding for a game engine is different than coding for making a game, if you understand what I'm saying. Like, so I'm curious if you're currently like learning C# as a part of game development, and you're leaving game development to do engine development to learn C++, because you can learn C++ with game development if you really want to, just like use it on Unreal or something like that. So I just curious.
And that's kind of probably where I would go. If you wanted to just learn C++, I would just jump to doing some Unreal development and use the engine, see how it's built and how it kind of works, instead of trying to build it. But I mean, I know people who really like building engines and like want to understand how it works and how to do it. So if you're just trying to do it for fun and the learning experience, cool. Just don't expect that it's going to like help very much with job prospects or anything, unless you're getting into engine development stuff, right? It's not going to make a big difference there. The understanding and the knowledge that you get might help, help in interviews and stuff, but it's not like it's not a high demand skill for most game developers.
Yeah, it's like probably the difference between being a graphics programmer and a gameplay programmer. Very different areas of expertise within the discipline of programming. Graphics programmer, you have to you really want to be a graphics programmer. What is this?
Yeah, and that's doing lots of math and lots of dealing with rendering and video cards and all that stuff. So it's
all right. So they're just becoming kind of a savant. They want to understand all aspects of it, which I can appreciate. Definitely appreciate.
Yeah. And that's definitely a good reason to do it. Let's see. Here's another quick question, and I'm gonna pop Rocco in from Simmer. So he just hopped on. I'm gonna hit the button and add him into the stream. Let him say hello, and then we'll go through this question, and then I'll start hitting you with stuff about my beautiful game design, Salim. What's going on, Rocco?
Hey everyone, y'all can hear me correctly and everything?
Yes. Yep. Oh, I can't make us big and fill up the whole screen. Oh, I bet it's because I have a question popped up.
What's going on, Rocco?
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, so I run a games website for Unity games. It's called simmer.io. you can upload any WebGL game to the site, and it plays almost kind of like a YouTube game. So,
cool.
The quick pitch is if you want to come to the site, it's all free. Upload your games, and just get them out there to the world. But anyway, yeah, I will leave it to the next question. I don't want to butt in and take.
No, it's all good. And everybody who hasn't tried it out, you should definitely go check out Simmer. I recommend it to people all the time and use it in a lot of the tutorial videos, because you just do a WebGL build, and you drag the freaking folder onto the web page, and it just works. The game starts playing. It's freaking magic. So if you haven't tried it out and like you want to just share a game, even if it's not a web game, if you can just switch to WebGL and compile it, you'll probably just push it out there and it works and it's free and it's just freaking magic.
Oh, cool. This looks awesome.
Definitely.
Thanks,
yeah,
guys.
go check it out. It's like itch.io, but easier to use for Unity stuff. You literally just take your folder, drop it up, done.
Very cool.
Yeah, I mean, we don't do all the other fancy stuff like builds and different versions and everything. We keep it simple. That's kind of the idea.
Simple is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. It's one of my favorites. So
thank you.
Glad you were able to hop on.
Thank you for the love.
So
Appreciate it.
This question that popped in said, in today's world, is it realistic to desire a career that is 50-50 development and design? I enjoy developing and would like to continue with it, but feel unfulfilled not designing.
Yes,
that's an interesting one.
Yeah, it's very realistic. I mean, you can obviously control that if you're doing personal projects, or a small group of people. But if you are a capable designer and you are also a good programmer or whatever you're classifying as development, then yeah, why wouldn't you? I actually had a buddy of mine. He said they were interviewing for a design position. And one of the guys that applied has been a programmer he went to school for design, but he's been a programmer for, I don't know, like 10 years or something like that. And he applied for like a low-level design position just because he wants to do design. And even though the position, like he doesn't 100% qualify, my recommendation was you hire that guy, because if he wants to do design and he already knows how to do gameplay programming in Unreal, you get a bonus. You're basically getting 2 for the price of 1. So I don't see why you wouldn't, he's probably gonna end up hiring this guy. I don't see why you wouldn't, why it wouldn't be realistic for you to be able to do that. But it definitely is realistic if you're doing your own thing. But as far as just in the industry itself, if your resume looks good, if you interview well, and you can highlight, hey, I'm being a designer, but I can also do all these other things potentially, then that's good. That's a thumbs up in my opinion. Pay wise, obviously there's discussions to be had there depending on where you're coming from.
That's where the problem hits, right?
Yeah.
People that want to do this,
the funny
they
thing
don't want to take the designer pay. They want the programmer pay, and they want to do the designer work.
So the funny thing about this, the story I just told, the guy said he's down to take a pay cut. He wants to be a designer. So he's, use whatever other skills I have, which to me just says that the guy is probably financially pretty all right. But that guy truly wants to be a designer. That in itself, if he had said that to me, I'd be like, all right, yep, let's just hire this guy, because he's actually interested in being a designer, or seemingly interested in being a designer. He may secretly be a millionaire and not
seems heavily motivated, and interested.
But yeah, so yeah, I mean, the pay thing, definitely throws some more sort of wrench in it. But I don't. If you are genuinely interested in doing it, then you have kind of a leg up, because you can understand outside of design, external to the discipline, how what other disciplines might look at it, and on top of that, you can also teach designers how to do that. That's one of the big reasons why I'm not a programmer, obviously by trade, but a long time ago I decided, hey, I need to really understand, at least at a basic level, what this is, or at least have a good friend who is a good programmer, Jason Weimann, so that when I'm developing, I can speak that language. When I'm writing a design doc, and I need to talk about art, or sound or programming or anything when it comes to a system, I can at least write it in a way where I'm speaking a language that's understandable across the lake there, so that when we get into a room together and we're talking about something, we're all on the same page initially. So like understanding outside of design is great. If you started there and you go into design, I think that's super cool. And I don't see why any company, if you qualify for the design position, certainly, I don't see why it wouldn't be realistic.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Be a helper, right? If you get a job as a designer and you want to get into programming a little bit, just help other people. And that's sort of one direction that you can go to sort of inch your career in one direction or the other. If you're a programmer, you're really interested in design, just be a helper to that design team, whether it's like cleaning up a dock or whatever. And then once they trust you, they're going to give you more and more responsibilities. That's kind of one way that I look at it.
It definitely can be difficult because depending on the environment you're in and the egos of people, you know, designers can be pretty, I don't know, crazy about the non-designers coming into their space. But you know, if you're working with good people and people are being adults, certainly if you're approaching them in a way that's, you know, friendly, then yeah, like your example is 100% like on point. The more that someone teaches me something, the just better I get. So you're just doing me a solid when you do that stuff for me. But then some people are just like, some people are really kooky about that type of stuff for whatever reason. I don't know why.
You know what? I mean, I'm just getting at gain that trust before you go in and say, hey, I want to revamp the whole design of this game. It's kind of is really what my advice would be there as well.
Yeah.
People don't like you moving their cheese or whatever you call it.
Hey, I rewrote your doc for you just to do it right.
I went in for an interview at Microsoft a long time ago, and my dad said, "What you got to do is you walk up to Bill Gates' office and tell him you're going to revamp this whole operation." So luckily I didn't take him up on that, but you know, make waves on the first day.
You never know. He might have like loved your confidence. Like, yeah, let's hire this guy.
I didn't test it out. So,
like security guard, hire this guy.
they carry me out the door with one of those big hooks or whatever.
All right, Jason, what were your questions for me?
Okay, well, first, there was a follow-up on that question saying that it's related to VR specifically on this question, which definitely makes it more likely. The VR teams tend to be smaller. You're going to have a lot more interaction and insight there for most of them. Not all, I'm sure, but for most.
Yeah.
All right, let's do a quick. Here first, I'll tell you about my my amazing game idea, Salim, and then I'll show you my beautiful visual aid that I pulled up. It's right here, but I took a screenshot so everybody else could see it better.
My wife's calling me. I gotta
go. Yeah. So the general idea was I wanted to make a RTS game. Like I know I tell you this all the time, I'm sure. An RTS, but I wanted it to be a battle royale style RTS. So I'm going to build it out as a 4 to 16 player at first version of a Command and Conquer style game where halfway through the timer, thinking at either 30-minute games or 1 hour games or something like that, starting a storm that shrinks in the map. So basically I have to be the last man standing in the center of the map with, the single, whoever's got the last building or unit standing wins, essentially, right? So with the idea of keeping people on the outside at first, and then, lots of competition for the inside early on. So you have kind of an option of fighting over the outside areas or fighting over the inside early on, and then trying to figure out how you want to build up and move, and then doing some army variation like a 0 hour later on once the core idea is in, and see if it works. And I drew up my beautiful map here. You can see it. It's amazingly good artwork with lots of dollar signs. That's what all these are, is dollar signs there, the little squiggles there.
Mm.
But essentially what I was thinking was having 4 bases on the 4 corners that are kind of raised up areas with ramps going down and a little bit of money resources in there. So there's like a little resource collection in the area or on the edge, and then some more resources kind of right around the edge that would early on get hit by the storm. So like, the first half hour, those start to disappear. So if you heavily went in the spot that had a lot of stuff, that shit starts to shrink, and then kind of fight towards the middle and just essentially just be the last one standing, but have an RTS where I've got a very fixed goal, a fixed timeline, and a couple different options for how you could play. Because you could either rush to the middle and try to like solidify that hold on it early and fight the other people that are doing that, or try to build up really big around the edges and kind of like rush in and take over when the storm's hitting. At least that was the idea. I don't know if it'll be fun, but it seemed fun in my head.
Can't you? So, like, wouldn't the strategy always be just rush to the middle and try to fortify? Because once you fortify there, because everyone else is moving.
Well, everybody would be fighting to get into there, though, right? Because that's like the destination spot. So everybody that's building up on the outside is going to be attacking you from all the different sides, trying to get into there, trying to take that over.
Yeah, but if you get there early enough, right? If everyone else tries to build up some power and then move, but you just move in and build up your power there, then they are suffering attrition as they move closer to you, but you're just getting stronger because you established your hold. So you can best effectively take people out as they come, unless the other 3 people basically all decide to attack you at the same time.
Right. And I was thinking up to 16 with 4 as like just the minimum. So there would be a lot more than 3 people in general.
I'm using the image, the map, which has.
Yeah. So I was imagining like with a map this size, maybe 8 people on it, like 2 in each corner.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like, it could be fun. I'm just trying to think of this feels kind of like a Populous meets Battle Royale, because Populous is not necessarily about like building and play. Populous is like getting strong and then kind of moving around and like getting your building your like warrior dude, and he just walks across the planet and just starts destroying things. God, I love Populous. So yeah, it could be pretty entertaining. The storm, so when the storm comes in, is it just destroy?
I was thinking it would just destroy anything that's in the path. So units, buildings, and then have some different types of armies. One type of army that's maybe got weaker stuff where their buildings can actually get up and move somehow, or at least some subset of them can, but they're weaker. More of like a mobile, kind of like the GLA on 0 Hour, or the there's another one I was playing recently where one of the armies, like their entire base could just move around and stuff.
Yeah.
There's something similar to that for maybe one side, but then other sides where they have cheaper buildings that are more powerful, but you could sell it off or something at a half loss, like you do in a standard RTS or something. So you build them, but eventually you gotta either sell them or they get destroyed. Kind of thing. So that way there's a reason to put them there, but then also there's a reason not, like if you built your little refinery right next to the money thing in the bottom right corner, it's great at first, but half an hour in, that thing is dead, and the ones more towards the middle are better. And maybe the positions on those aren't perfect, right? But essentially just trying to shrink down the resources and push everybody in. I don't know. I just wanted to build an RTS, really, and then I thought this would be a fun twist on it.
The center position could already be inhabited by some major force. So someone who rushes there has to actually break through that. Potentially, but also you could do something like maybe that center position is where you can like basically start the storm or some shit like that. Like whoever gets there first presses the button and the storm starts bringing people in. It could be interesting.
Or build like a building that you create that starts the storm in there.
Starts it, or you could also might be cool if I'm trying to think of how that center position, like if there's some sort of movement to it. That could be interesting. But yeah, this sounds like it could be pretty fun. At least it's fun to prototype.
That's what I'm doing now, is just kind of prototyping out the idea, seeing if it's actually any fun to play. So getting it working in a single player version real quick, so that I can set it up, kind of drop down and pick a spot and build up a little base and defeat some NPCs, and then turning it into a multiplayer. So it's using the RTS engine asset from the asset store, which has, like, I haven't tried it out yet and dug into it, but it's got network support using Mirror. So be able to kind of build it up and just make it somewhat playable in the next couple weeks, I think. And just see if it's actually a fun idea before diving in and really
but how
spending a lot of time on it.
How extensive would you want the RTS to be? Are we talking like Civ level craziness?
I think more like Command and Conquer level.
Oh yeah,
just, yeah. Like, I mean, I want to have it so there's enough stuff that it's interesting for an hour where you're going through building, upgrading, and changing things. Not too much micromanagement. I'd rather have lots of units than a couple units that I'm heavily managing. And maybe not too many units, obviously, there'd be a lot of fucking players, but a good number of them. And I think just more like 0 hour. I'd also really like to go with like the rock, paper, scissors style setup that 0 hour had, where like one army can totally crush another army, that can totally crush another army, they can totally crush another one, just because then you get 16 people and they're all battling, and you actually have to do a little bit of strategy there on, like, you know, if you're the infantry guy, you probably don't want to go against the toxin guy. You want to let somebody else take him out first, or whatever the theme is there.
But I think you'd almost have to make it so whatever is on the edges as far as a base, like that base has to somehow be mobile. There has to be some aspect of it that's mobile, so I can move my establishment forward. Because once the storm hits and all that stuff just starts getting eaten as I move towards the center, depending on how long it takes to build and shit, it's just going to suck, because now a base and a bunch of resources are gone. Now I'm just kind of screwed, stuck in this limited state. So it might be cool if like you could basically just have kind of a some sort of like mobile city option that's obviously less useful. Like maybe you can load it up with a bunch of shit and be like, okay, we're getting out of here, but we have so many resources that we can use on the way there. So then a player can kind of plan ahead. Okay, let's open up mines. Let's do whatever we need to do around here. Let's now take all of these resources. We're going to put them on the boat, the ark, or not the ark. What did Noah build again? It was the ark, right?
Ark, pretty sure.
And then at some point, oh shit, the storm's hit. Okay, we got everything on there. Let's get, all the women and children on there. Let's get, 2 of every animal and start moving forward. That thing can be mounted with artillery. You can drop stuff out of it, whatever. It's a cool visual moving across the map, but then like someone can just attack your thing and like destroy your city outright. But at least then like it kind of plays into the notion of the battle royale style where you are effectively being forced to move in. I think you might run into some unfun issues if you didn't have some aspect like that, because you're talking about
if you don't have some way to move things.
What's that?
Just without having some way to move things and keep them.
Yeah, I mean, even if you didn't want to do the city thing, if you had like resource bearers or something like that, people who just walked around like, let's get kind of brutal and dark, but like, you just had servants or whatever whose job is just carry fucking packs of resources, and they just like they're a unit, and that unit moves with you, and they deplete stuff from them as you build, as you move forward, because it's almost like you're just effectively building a path forward. You need resources to do that. You need all kinds of supplies and shit like that to keep your units fed and happy, and obviously you need weapons and shit like that. But also if you're upgrading on the way there, you have to have that aspect too. So of course, moving there, you might discover some new resources that unlocks a piece of technology. But still, like I think you'd have to have some aspect of that, but which creates a cool dynamic, because if someone comes and attacks you, they could just start destroying like where your resources are, and just as a thing targeting that. So you have to keep this thing constantly protected while you move forward, ready to siege this central area. So that could be interesting. Interesting. Yeah, like in I think it's Warhammer 40K has these churches on feet that just walk around. They're just like
the building just
big
gets up a
mobile
lot.
buildings, and they're gigantic. So you could have something like that. It's a cool visual.
I was thinking it might do something like that. Yeah, like do like maybe one of the teams, their buildings can just walk or roll or move or something.
Or like tank treads.
The other one could be like helicopters for the U.S. Just make them pick up the building. Just like I don't know the other ones that you could go pick up tanks and stuff.
Yeah,
just make it so
it would be like
have a big one that moves buildings around. It'd just be like a part of their gameplay is they can move their buildings.
It'll be like
with a helicopter.
What's that old game series? The Strike series, Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, where you're playing a helicopter, the Apache, and you could like pick up shit. And all that. Yeah, that could be cool.
Yeah. It'd be something like that. It could either be a unit or a special power for the team where they have a unit that moves their buildings around.
Yeah, that could be pretty fun.
Just come in and that way you could put it on some time and lock it down or a resource cost or something.
Yeah, and I think like depending on how the storm stuff is applied, if you did do a thing like whoever gets to the base first can activate the storm, but if not, eventually the storm will start regardless. Like it creates a cool sense of urgency, but it's like it's like a moving point urgency because you have to. I don't know how close someone is to the base to activate the storm, but I know the storm will definitely generate like in 10 minutes or whatever it is. So you just have to you have to take risks because obviously there's going to be environmental risks, standard RTS type stuff. I got to get some stuff. I like the house moving castle. I like that. But like gathering those resources and getting them on pallets or whatever it may be. But you have to first establish a beachhead, an area where you can even do that and survive in the stationary aspect. And then the movement part is kind of the next technological step forward for whatever your particular faction is. Could be pretty fun. Definitely some balance implications there. I would definitely limit the number of factions to maybe 4 or 3 if you're doing rock paper scissors. But
you got to do the full.
You're talking about unit rock paper scissors. Sorry, yeah. Go ahead.
So you got to do the full 12 armies.
Oh God.
Okay.
Oh God. No, that's a crazy vertical slice right there.
That's no longer
bring
a
it
slice.
all
That's
back.
the full game.
I'm still stuck on the idea of churches with feet. Forget the helicopters. We want churches with cartoon feet. I think that
right. You got to walk around.
I just have that image in my head,
goofy shoes,
really serious game, and then these cartoony feet pop out of the bottom of the church and move to the other direction. Maybe
just have feet on the bottom of everything. Are they, except just have realistic human feet down there.
Are they like squeaky shoes, like clown squeaky shoes or something?
Yeah, definitely. You get. No, don't listen to anything I say. I haven't made a game in a long time, so.
Churches with chicken feet.
Yeah, wow. There we go.
Oh man, but yeah, it could be. Looks interesting. Looks like a lot of fun. Wish I could work on it with you, but
Well, I'm gonna stream working on it tomorrow, so everybody that's watching can go check. There's a link in the description. You can go queue it up, and we'll go through and actually do some building tomorrow. Going through the process with the RTS engine stuff. I've had to write very little code so far to get things working. It handles the majority of things kind of out of the box, or definitely things that I make little changes here and there, but getting the core functionality working with it seems like it's going to be pretty straightforward and quick. And then I may end up going and rewriting the whole thing. Who knows?
One of your units could just be like a family with a Tahoe, and they just load a bunch of resources and they just follow the infantry behind the infantry. He's got a surfboard.
Just follow them around. Just the army of kids. Send a bunch of toddlers out. Seems like a non-PG game.
It's a kid with a little red wagon. He's just pulling the wagon. It's just filled with all kinds of stuff.
crazy wagon full of explosives. Go put these on the building. Just have a little toddler climbing up on the I can see it. We got chicken feet underneath the church, so why not? So they asked if there was a AI with defense in the middle on my thing. There wasn't yet, but after talking to Salim and everybody, maybe there is.
Yeah,
right?
that's what I was saying.
Or
Like,
the idea of having the.
I think you have to have something in there where you have to clear it out first. Some unnamed faction, or maybe it's a faction that's behind the storm or something. Like something. I mean, obviously, we're getting into some story stuff that you can definitely explain later, but yeah, I think like just walking up to it and taking it is weird. I think you should have to put some, because I could literally just start the game and move and just go take it, and then the bunch of time I spend in there, the chances of you stopping.
But I just figured if you went straight there and anybody else went straight there, you'd be fighting right away while everybody else is building.
That's the classic battle royale experience, right? Like you get to the center and it's like 1v1 or whatever it is, to last man standing, but it doesn't seem like that's like 100% what you want, right? You want people to build and consider building. So if the center had some sort of resistance, and people, at least initially, everyone has to stop and do something to build up. It's like playing Heroes of Might and Magic. Like you can go around your certain area first, or but some people, like the AI, especially freaking AI, it'll have like 800 heroes like right away for some freaking random reason, and that hero just goes out and destroys everything somehow, some way, which drives me freaking batshit crazy. But in this sense, like you want to have a reason for people to actually stop and consider their environment and take on a chance of not being able to start like super efficiently. But they're taking a chance in that sense versus just moving forward. And if they know that there is some threat that's there, the threat could be super basic, because the threat doesn't have to build over time. The threat could just be it's pretty static.
Be dudes with rockets and a rocket launcher pad, or in a building or something, a little tower defending it. Yeah, that makes sense, because then you could have people go to like those middle or semi-middle dollar signs that I got there, try to build up right there and rush in. Try to get in. As a strat, like they got to get past whatever the basic defenses are first.
Because and of course, the interesting thing about that is that if the two people are going around the same time, and some guy builds up, builds up like a little fortification outside to try to siege it, then someone else comes in and can come from behind them, or they can come from the other side and they just take over the base, and then you're like, oh crap, now I'm just fighting someone. But you get kind of a cool kind of moment to moment deal there, where people have built up stuff. They've definitely engaged in the systems that you want them to engage in, and then you can still get that kind of heated moment, or moments if there's a bunch of people doing it. I can definitely see like this building from the top down. I just see this building in a dust clouds from multiple directions of people moving forward, trying to get to this building, and then just starting like pew, 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 like lasers just firing, surfboards flying, chicken feet all over the place. Just a bunch of crazy stuff happening. And like the faction that's in the middle of the base, the NPC is just like, dude, what is going on, man? what's happening here? We got to get out of here. That could be pretty cool.
I don't know. I'm gonna have fun with it. I think it'll be a blast. Paul sent in a super chat with the idea of a name for it, Riders of the Storm. That was pretty cool. I gotta come up with a naming is always the hardest part for me. I always struggle with coming up with a name for stuff. That's why I just name things after people I know and just turn their names backwards.
Naming's easy.
I don't know how many things I've named Salim backwards. And there was another one earlier that I missed from Mr. Bubbles. I want to say thanks for that one too. I have no idea why super chat limits are smaller.
This would just be called Battle Royale RTS, the game. It's simple.
Yeah, that would be my naming scheme. Yes, Battle Royale RTS with tanks.
and chicken.
You got to make it like something super long and ridiculous. We
Yeah.
did Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD
Yeah.
remix when I was at a game studio, and I think we were just in a competition to see how long we could make the game or the name.
Super Double Battle Royale RTS,
Definitely.
Neon Genesis, EX
with
Turbo
tanks
Edition
and jeeps and rocket guys
5.
and snipers.
Exactly.
Why do you
Like
say
it.
this is the 5th one? Are there 4 other? No, I like the number 5, so this is the 5th
I
one.
wonder what the longest name you can get for a domain name is. Like, how many words can be in that? It'll limit the game name. All right. So, do we have any other questions that have come up? Or does anybody want to ask any questions now that I'm done harassing Salim about my game design?
Yeah, he always harasses me about game design, but he never wants to work on a game with me. I'm always like, let's build something. He's like, no, I'm too good for you. You designers and your egos. So you know how it is.
Yeah, you just write the design doc and then I'll make a game. Right.
Weimann's Tower. No, I actually have a question if you don't mind. You said that you're going to actually stream the early development of this thing. When you actually are streaming and trying to do work at the same time, do you feel that keeps you focused, or is it distracting having to explain everything? Does that actually, maybe when you have to explain something, does that actually help you with the with maybe coming up with a simpler solution or anything like that? Or
sometimes. So I guess it's kind of a mix. Like for me, when I'm streaming and doing development stuff, I tend to be a little bit more cautious about what I'm doing and not go like too wild, just trying random experiments, because I don't want to confuse people and lead them down the wrong path. So I tend to stick with things that like I'm pretty sure I know what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it and how I'm going to kind of run through it. So it does, and that kind of has a small downside of like I'll be less willing to try out new things and experiment a little bit more. But I tend to get more I guess done productive wise, like going through step by step and knocking those things out. And I also end up cutting a lot of things and realizing things that I don't need to do, and not find. I find that I don't get distracted in the same ways. I might get distracted in thinking about what I want to do and how I want to do it, but I won't get distracted by like, do I want to pick this pretty art, and do I want to change this thing out, and do I want to try this random wild idea that I had because I watched a YouTube video about it last night. And those things don't so much pop up. So it's a bit of a mix for me. It's definitely not like the most productive way for me to develop, but I mean, throughout my day, I get interruptions constantly anyway, so it's not that much different for me. But I mean, obviously, I think the most productive times are like, I'm alone, solid, quiet out day. Like, I got 10 hours and nobody's there, nothing's going on, just me working on it. I probably get the most done. But it's not bad. It's not like it's a negative on my productivity versus a normal day where I'm interacting with people and I've people coming in and out and kids coming in and out and stuff like that. So it's about the same.
When I do it, it's similar, where it's a different type of efficiency. I would explain it like when I'm just doing stuff by myself, I'm more efficient, I'm faster, but I will get more distracted. I'll go down rabbit holes of like, oh, I found a bug, I need to fix this bug, let me fix this bug right now. Where if I'm doing a stream, especially if I've got a stated goal where I'm like, okay, before I'm done with this stream, I want to have this thing done. And then I find bugs and I'll be like, shoot, there's a bug. I need to ignore that bug. Can I move on without fixing it? Yes. Okay, I'll fix, And there's a different reward out of it too. Even if I don't finish what I set out to do, I've been interacting with a few people who come to my channel and see the streams. They give ideas. They help me out. It's fun to see Jason pop in every once in a while, or another Jason pop in every once in a while, or someone who's constantly coming back and coming to see all these streams and is just interacting the whole like 2 or 3 hours. It's a very rewarding experience that is just gives you a different outcome. Right. So it's efficient in some ways, less efficient in other ways, rewarding in different ways, and I think just fun in the end.
I'll just say both of y'all have a lot of guts. I don't want anyone looking over my shoulder while I'm doing stuff. Well, and the other thing is like when I streaming web development probably is way less fun, but I always get afraid that I'm going to accidentally show one of like the secret keys or whatever to my database and like, have some hacker come in and, pull down Simmer or whatever. So I don't know if I'd necessarily go that route, but it definitely sounds kind of interesting for sure. And yeah, I mean, games obviously are way more fun. So
Yeah, well,
yeah, streaming
they're
game
not
dev's
always
fun,
but yeah.
but people like to watch
yeah,
it more.
I
I
hear
think.
you.
Yeah.
I had some long nights trying to get out Gold Masters before.
Oh man.
Before it was in the days where there was no like you couldn't update the game. I think it was like Wii or whatever. Just like you better get it right.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's going. Getting burned to a disc and you're done.
Oh yeah, at that point. I mean, those days it's permanent. That's it. Yeah.
But the good thing was you could actually take a vacation afterwards. I know a lot of guys and gals now that don't get to take that vacation working on that first revision.
Yeah, I mean,
You got to finish the game before people download it.
Yeah, that's
Before they
how it works
upload
anymore, right?
I mean, I love my job, but man, it sometimes it is just painful. It is stressful. It is. I mean, it's like any like big industry job. It gets to you sometimes. And like certainly like working on like a live product and stuff is insane. Which basically almost every game nowadays is effectively a live product with all the patching and things like that. Which obviously, some would argue that it affects the overall quality of games in the industry nowadays. When you can just live patch everything, why do you care about your release product? But thankfully, there are people in the industry who still really give a shit about quality, regardless of that.
I think it's a lot more stressful doing the game ones in general. I mean, I'm sure there are some scenarios with enterprise stuff where it's worse, but in my experience with the enterprise projects, like if something goes wrong, most of the time nobody's really going to be very upset. Most of the time, like nobody's even going to care. Occasionally, somebody that's a manager or director or something is going to be upset because it caused a problem, or some end user of the thing that you're working on inside the company, right? I mean, unless you make like a giant mistake and you make, phones that explode on airplanes or something, right? You go to that level. But the majority of the mistakes that you're going to make or problems that you're going to run into in enterprise stuff, there's just not a big giant audience of extremely engaged, invested people who are emotional about it and give a shit. Like you're not going to have all of these people working in the test facility who are like, oh, this new feature isn't as good as we wanted, or we don't like this change, so now we all hate you and we're going to, everybody's going to be mad. They're going to give you some feedback. Oh yeah, this thing's not very good. Could you change it? And that'll be pretty much it. The problems that you run into seem and feel a lot smaller, and the way that people react to them is generally a lot more mature and adult in an enterprise thing than when you're dealing with, and it's not just like game players, but just the public in general, because you got a wide variety of people. So you're going to get people that have all kinds of responses, and again, that have really big emotional investments in the game. Nobody's got an emotional investment in the tools that they use at work. Right? Nobody really cares about the Salesforce page except for the person working on it and the person who's in charge of that project. Everybody else, like, it's a stupid tool that I use at work.
Oh my god, I use games to pay for my kid's preschool. There's he goes to the YMCA preschool and it uses some Salesforce product. And man, I guess I shouldn't be. It just doesn't freaking work. It's like it's awful. I have to type, like, they have this feature where you save the credit card number, and it just. I have to type it in every single time, and I have to delete the old credit card number just to get my school teachers paid up. So it's crazy. But yeah, no, I think I agree with you there. Working on both sides of this stuff, the blessing and the curse is just the passion that goes into game development. It's a blessing because everyone really cares. It's a curse because everyone really cares. So
games are fun.
Yeah.
They're a lot of fun to work on, and that's kind of the the other side of it was, when you put out something that people like, you actually get a lot of feedback that people love it and they're excited about it. Where when you do that with an enterprise project, people are like, "Oh, that's cool. What's for lunch? Where are we going for lunch? What's next?" Nobody gives a shit.
This thing does
So
exactly what it's supposed to do. All right, cool, awesome.
Now I can continue to do this job that I'm not that into. That's pretty much what you get out of it. So games are a lot of fun. By the way, if anybody is still watching, I know there's at least a couple people there. Make sure that you hit the thumbs up button, please, and subscribe and share the stuff. We're getting close to wrapping up, but we'll be back next week. And if you want to see more game stuff,
you'll be back next week.
I guess
you'll be back next week.
Yeah, no, Salim's coming back next week, right?
Dude, that
right.
that
Salim's over there.
doesn't work, dude.
Where the hell are you?
I'm right.
You're over there.
I'm there.
Yeah,
there is a question there. I don't know if you wanted to address it or not.
Yeah, which one? The talent one?
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
Well, we obviously know it's not talent because Salim got into game design and didn't have any. No, I'm kidding.
Come on now.
This is how much of design is talent and knowing how to express your concepts versus esoteric technical knowledge.
I mean, ultimately, it's a creative environment, so it's or a creative medium, so it's going to start with passion and desire first, and then if you have any, I mean, there's a notion of like a super talented designer and what goes into that talent. You could argue that part of that is maybe their background, technical knowledge, or something, and understanding how things go together just from that. But I mean, how much of it is talent versus? I think it's just a person. I'm just a guy who loves video games. I love all the aspects of it. I love, the science behind it, the sociology, the psychological portions of it, all those things that you don't think about when it comes to video games. You just think about the dopamine and the fun, but then there's a whole layer to it that I got exposed to, getting in the industry. But I got into the industry just because I like games. I like playing paper and pencil games. I like, video games. I like board games. I like all these things. I'm not like a fanatic about board games, but I enjoy the challenge or the competition. I love the creativity of playing a paper and pencil game. And some of my most creative times is, playing D&D with friends and building our own world, our own characters, our own stories and backgrounds. And that just, when I got an opportunity to get in the industry, that was it. And I've, at every point I've been able to succeed. And I don't know that it's because of some invisible talent. I think it's just experience. It's just a desire and passion and love. And then application is a whole different aspect. Technical knowledge can certainly help up front, but I've gotten technical knowledge from the application of these desires and love. So it isn't, I wouldn't say that that you can like really say is talent versus technical knowledge. Someone knows how to program or build or implement a gameplay experience. They could just reproduce something. I can reproduce Mario in Unity. Okay, cool. But is that fun? Well, Mario's fun. I know that. So I can recreate this and I can say that this is fun. But is my recreation fun? No, because it's not Mario. It's just some dude jumping around on bricks. There's a whole thing to it that someone like Miyamoto or other people at Nintendo recognized as this thing is fun here. Like this is going to be great when we put all of these things together. And I definitely argue that some of that is talent, but what makes that talent is experience, is personal experience, is understanding, human psychology and things like that. So I don't think you can really just say like it depends on what you view as talent. Like someone who's really good at what's a good talent? Like someone who's really good at playing basketball. They may have an inherent ability to play basketball, certainly as a professional basketball player. They may have that, but in order to actually be good at it, they have to apply some form of practice and study and things like that. So I think in order to be
that's the technical knowledge part.
What's that?
That's kind of the technical knowledge part.
Yeah. I mean, in order to be
Going
a
through
good designer,
doing that.
you can have a good foundation, and that foundation for me is just playing games and loving games. And then the application and the ability to actually get hands-on and learn that stuff, that just fed into that passion and desire, and it creates, I guess I'm an okay designer. But there are definitely
No, you're a
that
great
way better.
designer. I was just doing shit. But on the design technical knowledge stuff, I mean, I know there's a lot of different stuff that designers kind of learn and talk about internally, just with game design techniques and ways to make things fun and interesting. Is there anything that I mean, obviously, some percentage of being a good game designer is kind of understanding that stuff, but how much of that do you think is important? And is there anything specific you'd recommend people kind of look at and learn about, like when it comes to just game design theory in general?
I'm a very old school game designer. Like I said, I came up just from playing games and knowing what I think is fun. And then, nowadays you like analyze and look at every aspect, which is very interesting. When people go to school and get game design degrees, which I am like the polar opposite of that. I am just kind of I'm just kind of a blue collar game designer. I just came up from just experiences. I have done some college to get a CS degree and stuff like that. Which obviously I get exposed to things like sociology and things and stuff like that. Which after the fact, after actually learning those things, after being in the industry for a while, I realized, hey, I was recognizing this stuff just natively because it just feels natural. So I mean, as far as what to study, like it's always going to come back to just playing games, like exposing yourself to different aspects of games, reading about the development history of certain aspects, your favorite game series, or just individual game. Like read how the developers came up with that concept. Find out where they messed up along the way, what they were looking at. What techniques they used to identify things like fun, or what systems would go well, how deep they needed to go with the system. It really just is about research. The internet is huge. It obviously wasn't as huge when I started. All that information.
It didn't exist when you started, did it?
What's that?
Did the internet exist when you started?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Oh man.
What was that? It's the internet is just a bunch of tubes, and what was that that they used to watch with Twitter Act a Cookie? But either way, but yeah, like it just like explore, like curiosity, like let it like feed it.
Playing stuff.
If you look
on playing games, like
Yeah.
the thing that I've noticed with you versus most people that I know that work on game stuff is that you play a giant variety of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Right. And I feel like the good game designers, or at least a lot of the experienced game designers, tend to do that, where they've played everything at least a little bit, and then a lot of things a lot. Right. Like it's like this big exposure seems to make a big difference.
So one thing that I certainly enjoy, I mean, obviously my career is primarily MMO stuff, 3D MMO space. The one thing that's always been fun to me is taking a non-MMO concept, at least at the time, and trying to reproduce it in an MMO space, the experience itself. If you can take a side-scrolling Metroidvania experience like Metroid and like somehow reproduce that in a grand space with a bunch of players and all the problems that come with that, that's fun. Like you pull that off and it's fantastic, and you've learned so much from that. Whether succeed or fail, you've learned a bunch from it. But I wouldn't know about that if I didn't play a variety of games. Obviously, like Jason, you know me, I'm primarily a JRPG fan, and a Metroidvania fan, and when it comes to games I play. But yeah, I mean, I see a game, it looks cool, which just goes kind of to the visual aspect stuff we were talking about earlier, like presentation, things like that. I'll see a game looks cool. Oh man, or has a cool name. You see a game like Death's Door, you see the name, and you're like, oh man, I instantly am interested in what this is about. And then if the visuals are good, if the gameplay seems fun, or if it's multiplayer, if it's co-op, hey, I'm gonna check it out. So yeah, like a variety of games is good. Everyone should have like a favorite uh, RTS. Everyone should have like a favorite series, fighting game series. Like everyone should have that at a basic level, because it just means you expose yourself to it. And even if you don't have any other like references, at least you can say, hey, I really love Street Fighter Alpha 3 because of this, and this. Well, Street Fighter Alpha 3 is really old, but I don't care. It's still the fundamental concept of why I like it as a fighting game, there's still apply. And I can use that as a reference. So yeah, I think diversity in different games is fun. And I mean, come on, games are fun. Like we were just talking about this. They're fun. Like just playing one genre of game is weird to me. Like it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like we look for stimulus from all different aspects in life, from movies to TV to things like that. Like why wouldn't you look to different stimulus when it comes to gameplay, especially since it's like the leading medium, the leading way that people get entertainment at this point. Um, like why wouldn't you want to explore different things? Hey, I want to do something really frenetic and crazy fast paced. I'm going to play an action RPG, or I'm just going to play some Devil May Cry, right? But no, I want to relax tonight. I'm going to play a little bit of Divinity 2. It's turn based. It's fun. It's got some deep, rich story. I can have a cup of coffee while I'm playing it. Play with a friend, just take a break and do some other stuff while I'm playing it. So like there's different reasons to play diversity of things, and you're getting exposed this whole time to the different developers, different ways that things are applied, different concepts that are multi-genre based, and how they're viewed, 3D space, 2D space, whether it's isometric or whatever, or first person. Like there's a lot of exposure there, and I don't see why anyone would just stick to one genre unless you have very limited time to play games.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important for designers, especially to be trying out lots of things. And anybody in the game industry in general to be playing things, but designers especially, it's like
Especially indie stuff.
critical thing.
Like you should definitely be trying as much indie stuff as you can, because like if you're getting into games, like seeing what people do with little is pretty huge. Again, I'm going to reference Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight, fantastic game done by 3 people. And that was obviously a passion project. And those 3 people, I'm sure, played a variety of games, but you can tell where their passion is, and it comes through and through to the point where I wish they would release a second game. Going nuts here, but yeah. So like play games. I mean, play all of them. Like if something looks interesting, find it on sale if you don't have a lot of money, or find something that's like that, because you're obviously interested in it for some reason. Find something that's like that's a little cheaper and expose yourself to it. If they got early access, play it. Like never hurts. Never hurts. Spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes, see if the hook gets set, and then play some more.
Yeah, and of course you can always check out online games on sites like Simmer or Itch and all that stuff.
Yes.
And you can really you can get a sort of a feel for what can 1 or 2 people get done. I think that's important too, just to sort of understand the scope when you're trying to do something like really small or something as a prototype to maybe bring more things into the project and stuff. So even if you have no money, there are opportunities for that as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I do want to say, like, I kind of dismissed it earlier, or at least I don't want it to come off that way. There is plenty of academic game designers. One guy that I love to death at work, he's an academic game designer. He has his degree and stuff, and he and I get into really, really good discussions. And I think a part of it is just because I come from a completely different background when it comes to getting into games. And I can say that there's a lot of value. I have discovered there's a lot of value in just being traditionally now trained in game design, because through the experiences of people like me, these professors and stuff, and this curriculum has been built in a way where they kind of help you not stumble, and they give you a lot of fundamental stuff that I've had to learn. I've been in industry 20 years, and these guys are, they're being taught stuff that, man, I wish I wish I had come in with a lot of this knowledge.
Give you a little shortcut.
What's that?
It's like a shortcut to a bunch of the shit you had to stumble through and fail at the first time, or watch people fail with.
It is, but I definitely will not dismiss the experience, because actually having to experience that stumble. There are some stumbles that are like fine, like they're very like obvious stuff that if it hadn't happened to me, like it wouldn't have mattered. But there are like some very particular things that were I in college or something like that, I would have not experienced, and I think that I'd be very different as a developer today. But I can definitely appreciate some of the curriculum and just the quality of person that's coming out of some of these programs.
Speaking of programs, there were a couple more questions. One was, does my course cover mobile game development? And I answered in chat, but no. We talk about web development, console stuff a little bit, PC stuff. It technically all works for mobile, or mostly works for mobile, but it doesn't cover anything specifically mobile. And in my experience, there's not a huge difference outside of its characteristics and input and just the type of game that you would make, because you generally make very different games for mobile. Not everybody does, but in general, people do. And there were a couple other ones down here that were, where were they?
You scroll the chat on the YouTube. I'm on the other thing.
I use the Restream link because it lets me click on them and pop them up on the right-hand side. I don't know if it shows up for everybody, but it's got a nice thing. And YouTube, yeah, it shows in there too, but they disappear pretty quickly. The next question was about Inky, and I just want to hit it because I do use this. So they said, what do you think of Inky as a scripting language for writing dialogue text in dialogue boxes? I use it for exactly that. Only for the dialogue stuff, though, not for like scripting out a full game. I know you can do full gameplay stuff in Inky. Inky's like a dialogue text system for people who haven't used it before, where you can write out the dialogue tree kind of as all freeform text with little tags to bounce around. Wow. And then, yeah, you can basically build out like a whole dialogue system, and they've got a asset for Unity where you just drop it in, hooks right up to a box, has the buttons, and you can easily change it and make it work for yourself. But it just runs through and does like a full dialogue, but you can build a full game off of it too. You can trigger events, listen for things, do branching and set variables and stuff. I generally use it for the core part of doing dialogue stuff though, because it's neat. It's a nice, easy way that designers can just go in, write some dialogue in a text file, save it off, and then that'll just work. So making it easy for them. Yep, that's the thing, right? Make it easy for designers.
Thumbs up.
Super important.
I was telling everyone to thumbs up. Click the link.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely hit the thumbs up button.
You're supposed
too,
to do this,
if you haven't
right?
done it yet.
Is this how you're supposed to do it?
Yeah, you gotta. Yeah, you gotta put everybody. Click on Andrew.
Yeah, click on Andrew. Smash that button.
Click him. Smash the Andrew.
Smash that button.
Go to Simmer.io.
Smash the Rocco.
Thank you all.
There's another. Yeah, I need to put the link for Simmer down in the description too. Let me do that in just a second. Let me read the question, then I'm gonna drop it in there. So, how do you stay consistent when learning game dev?
Ooh.
Who's got an answer for that?
I have an answer. Have yourself a goal in mind of actually shipping the product, whether it's whether it's like a full-fledged game or not. Like, try and actually finish it up. Like, I know we all love to start projects, and then the shit hits the fan and it gets hard, and then you don't finish. I think learning the process all the way through and getting the bugs out and all that stuff is helpful. And when you get the game done, make sure you put it on the internet somewhere so that other people can check it out. But in terms of
and show it to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think we love starting projects, and it is hard to finish. And I think we all are like that. But I'll leave it to the other folks in the chat to.
I think that's good advice, to just make sure that you finish projects, like build small things that you can finish, and stay motivated by keeping them scoped to something that's reasonable. Don't try to build something that isn't easy. Like, pick targets that you think will be easy. because they're going to be harder than you think they're going to be, right? Like the one that you think is going to be easy is still probably going to be hard.
Key thing
But
there
don't
is
pick
scope.
something that you think is going to be or maybe a little bit hard. That's going to be very difficult, right? Go for the thing you think is going to be super simple.
Yeah, the key thing
and
there
finish it
for sure. And I would, I mean, to a micro level of what you're saying, Rocco, is you know, your goal should be to finish something, which should like inform how simple that goal needs to be. But then within that, there needs to be micro goals, because to stay consistent, you know, if you know, my goal could be just to finish something within the next month. But the day-to-day grind of getting to that goal, there should be something intermediate, right? There should be a kind of a micro goal or micro thing that you're doing. So, hey, I want to get to this milestone here. I want to get to this milestone here. So you know, very much, you know, like a personal schedule. It's easier to just like take little bites out of it when you're looking at this larger goal, even if it's something simple like a Flappy Bird, for example. But just getting like these little pieces and saying, okay, you know, by this week, I want to be at this point here, and doing this thing here. That can help for sure, because then you kind of take away from the intimidation of the larger thing, and you can take a bite-sized piece and move forward with that, and that gets you excited, keeps you excited. Okay, man, I got like this whole thing done. Okay, now what's on the next thing? Oh yeah, cool. And now all these things are together. Oh man, I'm so much closer to the bigger goal. So that can keep you consistent, keep you hungry. Because yeah, you know, everyone starts projects. I think I'm like working on like 10 games right now.
Right.
So many. But then when you look at the end goal, like, man, why can't I just be at the end already? Oh, God, I gotta like. You gotta like put little goals in there that you can actually like take advantage of.
Yeah, that's really great advice. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, I would add to that, finding sources of external inspiration, for me at least, has been very helpful. Oftentimes with small things. One of the things that triggers my desire to work more on a project that maybe, especially if I'm feeling like, you know, stuck or something, I browse the Steam games, and I don't play that many games, but when I browse Steam games, I somehow get inspired to make my own game because I want to see my game up there.
Yeah.
And that inspiration, like, just this literally happened the other night. I was going to play a game, and then I was like, oh, let me just see what's up here. And I was like looking at them, I was like, man, I want to get my game up there. So I closed Steam, didn't play a game, and instead worked on my project.
Oh, cool.
And that triggered it for me. And that, you know, that was 3 hours of time spent now. That
awesome.
I could have been playing a game. Instead, I worked on my project. Same thing, showing friends, showing people, doing streams like these, or watching people make games, participating in game dev groups. All of those things are potential inspirations for folks. And I think finding your own inspiration and what can trigger that. And then when you get into a funk, when you get a little demotivated, seek out that inspiration and try to get it to inspire you again.
Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Sharing the stuff helps a lot too.
Yep.
When you getting it out in front of people, letting people respond and see it, and especially if they have any kind of positive response, it goes a long way. There were a question and an answer I wanted to pop up real quick about gameplay or graphics. Which is better to make a game successful? And I thought Mr. Bubble's answer was pretty good. It appears that you can have a successful game with terrible graphics but good gameplay. Can't think of any examples for the inverse.
Yes, I was watching that too. I mean, probably the best example is Undertale. You know, I mean, I'm not going to say the graphics are terrible, but they're obviously not like, you know, photorealistic AAA studio graphics. But I mean, look at it. You know, something like Golf Story or something like that. Like, they're just basic pixel games, and the gameplay is, you know, completely enthralling. It's intoxicating. People play it. But there's probably some example of a game that was, you know, built to hype up a visual or something like that maybe was just a story game or something like that was also successful and probably memorable because of the visuals. But in that case, it would be
like the boundaries.
What's that?
Where they're like pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
I mean, it's some tech. It's basically like a tech demo that is a game. of some sort,
Mhm.
and they just wrap the story around it. In that case, it's people like being smart about presenting a product and saying, hey, we're focused on visual here, so let's just have some cool story and maybe some options, some subtle gameplay, some puzzles or something like that, and there you go. So there's probably examples of that or at least some games where people would say that's an example of it, but I would still argue that, I mean, you're playing a video game. Game is the word there. Gameplay is what you're trying to experience. What that gameplay is could be a variety of things. As long as it's impactful, it's going to become memorable, and the visuals is what you associate with that experience. But it could also be blocks and little spheres, and you had a lot of fun, and that's what you remember. I mean, come on. I mean, people played MUDs forever, right? People still play MUDs,
Yeah.
and there's nothing to them. It's just text.
Just text. Yep. There's mention of Zork up above, and
yeah, I mean,
and there's this Dragon's Lair, which I think kind of goes to what you're talking about, where games are kind of like pushing it and like at the edge. Like at the time when Dragon's Lair came out, it was like the most beautiful visual game at all. The gameplay was just hit left or right.
Yep. You're playing a cartoon, and it was testing your. But see, the gameplay there is just your response time, right? Like that's like, okay, flash boot, click this, like while it's, but then you're like excited, okay, I want to actually fail here because I want to see what the animation is for when he dies here. Like there's like a subtle like little meta game there. But yeah, like Dragon's Lair is a great example. Actually, it's just a cartoon, and I'm just like press the thing to play different cartoons. Yeah.
Although I think a Dragon's Lair arcade game would struggle now if it didn't push the boundaries way beyond what that one, like the old one, those 2D graphics were kind of the edge. Now to do something similar, I think you've got to come. I mean, you got to do something else that kind of pushes it.
I mean,
to stand out.
What's the game? PlayStation with the detective and the killer. Those all story. Someone in the chat said, I can't remember what it's called. I can't remember what it was called, but the detective ended up being the killer in the end. But that's all story driven. But it's like, I think people remember it more for the visuals, because the visuals are insane. But that's fairly recent, 7 years old, I think. Heavy Rain, yes, thank you, Heavy Rain.
Oh yeah, I was thinking of Indigo Project, which was in the same studio, I think, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. I love that game. That's awesome.
But that game is, the gameplay itself, is not like some crazy thing, but the visuals and like the expressiveness of the characters and stuff like that. That's a project that was more centered around tech. And showing off how you could push a console and things like that. At least that's how I took it. But the experience itself was still solid. But if it wasn't as visual, in that sense, if the gameplay was the same thing, but it wasn't as visual, I don't think people would, you could just basically just read a story or like read a book that's the same story and probably get more out of it if it wasn't as visually compelling, because it's like a visual story.
That's a good example of one where the graphics really make the difference.
So there's one more question. I guess I'm going to hit this before we start wrapping things up. Looks like it's almost noon here. But before I do that, I also just wanted to beg everybody to please just copy the link or hit the little share button and go share it somewhere, because it helps a lot, makes a big difference, and it makes it so Salim's more likely to come back. If the one where he hopped on is super popular,
I don't have a YouTube.
More likely to come back on. Yep, and then set up his YouTube channel.
I don't even know what that is. What's YouTube?
A YouTube channel?
Yeah.
I'll teach you all about it. So I'll get you an internet. I'll come over and bring you an internet. So this question I think is great for Andrew too. Which was, when making a complex game with many systems and mechanics, which is exactly what you're doing, right? do you tend to complete one system after another or iterate over them? So do you like build a whole system all the way to done, or do you start a system, get it working, and then build the next one, start to iterate through it and update them?
Both. So the systems I've been trying to make now have been very small and specific to what they are intended to do. However, they end up starting to work together really well. And so over time, I will go back and expand on one and add integrations with another, because they can be more powerful together and they work more easily together when there's, add something new, and now, oh, because I add this, I can integrate it into this other system and just click a button, boom, now this just works together. So a little bit of both, but I do try to make the systems very specific and small to their task. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're building, you build this thing and it works. Whenever you add a new radical element to it, a new variable, then that thing is going to probably change when it has to interact with it in some way, shape, or form. So you're going to be, by building the second thing, you are somewhat forcing yourself to potentially have to iterate on the other thing. So you can't, I would argue that you can't, in a game, we have multiple systems that are going to interact with each other. You can never say that this one system I built here is actually done until this other system that interacts with it is also done. But that system has to now interact with the previous system and the system that you're going to build before that. So technically, you're not really done iterating until your game is done, or until you have your vertical slash, or whatever you want to use as a milestone. So yeah, like it's as soon as you introduce another variable, all bets are off at that point. Unless it's just a system that just sits in the background, does nothing else. It just is this.
Probably not a very interesting system.
Well, though. I mean, but if you're talking about stuff like your ability system, right? Like you may, build your ability system, and you've like defined type abilities you're going to have, and that's it. Like that's your game. It's a very simple game. That's just it. Like jumping, right? Like you made your jump. It's done. You probably don't have to iterate over that particular system if you're considering that a system. But as soon as you have a bigger system like an inventory system or something like that, and you have to deal with, okay, now we have a chat system, or we have a NPC interaction system. When someone's in our inventory and they want to talk to something, we have to now deal with that. So now the system has to change a little bit. And then someone's purchasing something from a vendor. How's the inventory interact with that type of thing? So you had inventory system finished. It was all good and go. And now you go and sell shit. God damn it. Now I got to consider this other thing here. So I would definitely say that a system is never really done until basically all systems are done. And every time you add new, it's just multiplicative, or exponentially increased, as far as the things you have to deal with in that regard. But it can be fun, but also like that goes to, Rocco's point earlier, something small. Because as soon as you say, I want to finish this, and you look like, okay, I got 30 systems here, and they all like talking to each other. Oh God, you know what? I'm done. I'm good. I got 2 done. I don't want to do anything.
Yeah, and I think all those systems have changed, right?
Yeah.
Even like your jumping system, you add an inventory system that might affect the way that you jump, or how long you jump, and you're going to go right back in and be refactoring them. So personally, I like to get as many of the systems up and integrated and somewhat working with each other.
Yeah.
So I have a good idea of how they're going to interact, and then I'll start fleshing them out and like getting them into a more final state. So get all of the core functionality that they need to do, and then go through and do the polish and the extra stuff afterwards. Once I've kind of got that figured out, because reorganizing how things are integrated and how they interact with each other is a whole lot more difficult than making some modifications to the internals or polishing a thing up. And it's a lot easier to do that stuff after and not have to change all that stuff the second time through. What about you, Rocco?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I always make it a point to have whatever I'm working on be shippable as early as possible. Like if I had to ship this thing, I could do it today. And then, this is working sort of in more corporate type stuff. But if I had to ship this, I need to get this to MVP as soon as possible, and then put all the beautiful bells and whistles on it that make it an awesome product, because that gives you an opportunity to take it as far as you want to take it. And, I think, get it to a shippable state as fast as you can, and then add all of the stuff that makes it great towards the end of the project. I don't know.
I think that's good overall advice.
It's actually funny because MVP as a concept and MVP making you money is effectively early access.
Right.
So I want to get all these things, and I mean, it has potentially drastically changed the way people develop, right? Because you know, back in the day when you couldn't patch, your final product was it. Like you had to put everything possible into getting all of your iteration and things done, because your only option then is to make a sequel. And nowadays, if I can just get some stuff out, if I can basically get Vertical Slice out that has enough gameplay and early access it, and then get feedback there, now I can like step back and I'm making a little bit of money potentially. And that can feed and that can inform what we do later on as a development team or as a developer in Andrew's case, or a development team of one. So like, I definitely think like the concept of MVP and releasing it is effectively the early access system or concept today in games. And I mean, I am not the hugest fan as a consumer because it definitely gives people the ability to just kind of put out a poop sometimes, and then continue.
Nobody would ever do that.
That's a scientific term, right?
Continue. Like there's like much less pressure than, you know, like I said, in cartridge-based days or the non-patchable days. There's so much less pressure to release a decent quality product. And right now it's just, you know, MVP and there you go. Which definitely makes me sad. But I understand it. It's also let a lot of people get into the industry and make something, and you've had some gems come out of all of that. So it's just interesting. I am actually curious how development has changed since like early access became like a big thing, as far as how people's mindsets think, even big studios, like how they changed. Because you have like a studio like, I don't think Nintendo's ever done an early access thing. Their processes have probably stayed pretty consistent, and the quality of their first party games is, you know, obvious. But then you have other studios like EA and stuff, and I think Assassin's Creed, Ubisoft. I think they're investing heavily in doing early access stuff too, or at least like Kickstarter stuff, which is also another interesting aspect of games now. But yeah, I'm rambling now, but I am now curious to see how much development has changed with the whole MVP early access concept. I never even thought about it till now. Thank you, Rocco. You gave me something to research.
There you go.
Opening up minds here.
Yeah. I am pretty close-minded, as you can tell.
Yeah. That's lame for you. Closed-minded programmer. An artist.
I'm closed-minded artist.
I don't know if I've told you guys about this, but for the first, 10 years that I've been friends with Salim, my wife would always ask me, like, why does I would start telling him about some code stuff, and she would ask me, like,
stop talking.
What?
Hang on. Minimum viable product. That's what MVP stands for. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. MVP.
Yeah.
So yeah, my wife would always ask me, like, what does Salim actually do? Because he can't write code and he can't draw. He doesn't make art. Had no idea. She thought for sure that a game designer was an artist. And every time he would say he couldn't draw, she would get reminded that he couldn't draw and just be confused. Like, what the hell does he actually do if he doesn't draw? I thought he was a game designer. So it was, yeah. I had a lot of fun explaining that one to her over and over, trying to get it done. I think a lot of people struggle with that, like knowing what game designers actually do, though.
Yeah.
Like what the job?
It's an unfortunate thing.
Yeah. And it's a hugely important job.
Yeah.
What's that?
I can't explain what a game designer does because, like that question development and getting into design. There's game designers that can do all kinds of shit. But at their core, they just do game design. But they know how to draw. They know how to model. They know how to program. They know, like, it is definitely hard to define what a game designer is, because it's such a broad term. I mean, look at Andrew. Like, he's a game designer, but he's a game developer. Like, what do you classify him as? You just use developer to indicate someone who doesn't do game design specifically. Like, a programmer is a game developer, an artist is a game developer, a game designer is a game designer, but we're not game developers. It's weird. Like, it's really strange. I've actually had people tell me straight up, I've said I'm a game developer, and they're like, no, you're a game designer. Oh, okay, well, what? So then what does that mean? Like, why would you make that distinction? Is it because my title has game in it? I don't know. Like, game programmer, game artist,
I feel like that's
game
just
designer,
a more
game
specific.
developer. We're all developers. What's that?
Yeah. In my opinion, that's more like just a specific subset of game developer. You know.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the roles of a game developer. So I think a lot of people just get it mixed up. And I mean, the real job of game designer is to make the actual game, make it fun and make the actual game. I think a lot of people don't realize that most of the implementation stuff is generally done by game designers. It's not done by artists, not done by programmers.
Yeah.
It's done by the actual game designers that are building the game and putting the things together and making the actual game out of all the parts.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of that. Andrew.
Like basically like crossover. They do some amount of programming or technical aspects of the game, scripting. Not always. There's more conceptual game designers, but there's ones that get their hands quite dirty as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are not so much now, but there are game designers who are just writers. They just do story. They just do dialogue, or they whatever it is. Like, that's all they are. But they're still game designers because they can they're still writing designs. They're still creating. They just aren't implementers. And that's fine. I mean, there's less of a market for that now. But it's a specialty. I'm just a game designer, a generalist, who's done all kinds of goofy stuff. But there's still the notion of, content designer and systems designer and all kinds of stuff that's a specialty within the discipline. But that's true of all the disciplines. Gameplay programmer or graphics programmer. A graphics programmer is if you're a part of a game studio, you're a game developer in that sense still. So it is kind of weird. You can't really define what a designer is. Someone here said, in most cases, the game designer has all the skills the others have. I think that's actually not true. If you're talking about indie sense, maybe. But in general, a game designer is a guy who takes advantage and uses all the tools that he's given by the other disciplines. He helps define and he asks what those tools are as a part of his design and his creation that he wants to make, he, she, whatever. But so when you do get a designer that does have all those skills, that guy is insane. But
they become the producer and the manager really quickly often.
I will say that the designer who can speak and understand the different disciplines is more what a designer should aspire to be. When you're talking about like high end, like a creative director or something like that, then they probably have plenty of skills outside their discipline just from their time rising up through the ranks. But a designer is just they're just like the focal point for all the other things. I used to have I
think of them like a house designer, like an interior designer almost. You watch any of those renovation shows, there's somebody deciding like what's actually going to go there, how things are going to get together. And they may not be able to build the bookshelf perfectly, but they could probably build some sort of a bookshelf or help with it a little bit. and they might not be able to paint a fucking wall fast, but they could probably do a little bit of paint. Like they have a loose understanding of how the job's done. They know how to do the things.
Yeah.
But then they direct the people that are specialists on those things into doing those things, and then combine it all together. They do the rearranging and laying out of the room and putting the things in the right spot. Kind of that, and it's a huge part of a game that people just don't realize, and it's the difference between a fun game and like a prototype.
I used to describe the importance of a game designer in a certain way, in that, like, if you have a window, the scene outside the window is art. They make it look good or bad. The frame of the window and the way it functions that holds the glass is programming. It's, they make sure all that stuff functions in the background. But the glass itself is the designer. If a designer is not great, or if they do a poor job, then that glass is really foggy. So the art can't be seen very well because no one's paying attention to it because the gameplay is taken away from it. How well the window works doesn't matter either, because the glass is so foggy. Like, there's nothing for me. Like, I'm so focused on the fact that I can't see through this dirty window. But if the window was clear, then they can see all the art beautifully. The way that the window frame works is great, which is all the gameplay and all that interaction. So generally, like, when I've previously or in the past described like the importance of designer, it is that, like, if gameplay is really bad, if a designer's done a bad job, then it doesn't matter how good your game looks. It doesn't matter how performant it is. No one wants to play it because the gameplay sucks. The glass is foggy. I can't see out of it. And that's the point of the window, is so that I can see outside. But if it's crystal clear, then I get to enjoy the view. I get to open that window every now and again, and I just get to sit back, sip some Mai Tais, and just watch the sunset. So that's how I've described like the importance of a game designer in the past. And for some people, that actually helps clarify. Like they can kind of relate and understand, because we are the lens that you see all the project through. Some people, game designers think they're the end all be all there, but I mean, it is, unfortunately, that is kind of the deal. But what a game designer is broad. A game designer can be a guy who can program, who can script, who can write, who can model, and do all these things, but bringing them all together into an idea, and executing on the gameplay aspect of it, especially when it comes to stuff like level design and stuff like that, which is a whole nother ball of wax. It is definitely like an important key part of a project coming together. But yeah, I'm going to get off my soapbox.
Yeah, it's super important, and I think definitely gets undervalued. Just like Rocco's lack of a beard.
Oh, come on, people. I show up.
Just no, he can't be a real dev. He has no beard.
When I go to job interviews, I actually wear a nice shirt. It's amazing. Sometimes that almost got me kicked out one time. I showed up in a tie, I think, for my first interview, and that was maybe a no-no.
You show up in a tie to your game dev interview?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, like maybe about in 1999 or maybe 2003. I can't remember. But yeah, I showed up in a tie, and people are like, "Well, you're out."
Well, when you went to talk to Bill Gates, did you wear a tie?
That was the problem. Wearing a tie to see Bill.
That made me laugh. Thanks, Fredo. 80.
It is interesting. It's one of the few places where I think you theoretically could overdress for the job a little too much and kind of creep everybody out. They're like, "Hey, this dude wearing a tuxedo this interview," and everybody else is wearing like a ripped short shirt and shorts, and but.
I've been to plenty of interviews with the tie and a nice shirt on. It's fine. It's fine.
Now you want to show up in your pajamas with with no shoes.
At some point, I used to grow mohawks for interviews so that people would remember who I was. But now I'm getting bald.
Oh well,
so
yeah.
Somebody stole it.
You have an inverse mohawk, right?
Yeah.
There you go. That's what you got to do. Just grow it out on the sides there, so nobody will forget you. They'll all remember.
I have a gross thing too.
Oh, that's fine.
Oh,
that's fine. You got the little rat tail.
There you go. Gross rat tail. I have some
That's where
from,
you're focusing your power. You can just tell
yes.
people, well, all they hear up top is going to the back. It's focusing power right there.
Well, I started growing it at the beginning of Corona, and the idea was going to shave it off once it was time to go back into the office, but I'm still at home. So
you never get to cut it again.
It's hung in there. But all right, I'll
like, all right, grandkids. So back in the year 2020,
yeah.
Grandpa started growing this sucker out.
The rat tail.
Still waiting to go back in. All right. Well, I guess we'll start wrapping up. Did you guys have some things you want to share, talk about real quick before we go? I know Andrew's got a stream coming up later for everybody that's interested.
Yep. So check out my YouTube. I'll be streaming later tonight and just randomly hopefully throughout the week, depending on how the day job goes.
Yeah, and I linked that in the chat and in the description below. So you're going to stream some development later on today?
Yeah, that's the plan. I'm going to get some fresh air and then come back and load it up.
I can't.
Salim's pointing at his name.
No, I'm trying to point at Andrew and Rocco, but I can't. Like, I can't do it.
Yeah, it's so weird when it's backwards, right? Wait, no,
Right
that
there.
way. Yeah, backwards.
Oh,
Oh,
I see.
bam.
Down,
Got it.
okay.
Got it.
Yeah, it is hard.
Yeah, that is not the easiest thing. All right. So yeah, Rocco, you got anything else you want to share other than people should jump over to Simmer and sign up and play a couple games?
Yeah, play a couple games, sign up, and it's all free. Don't leave these games to rot on your hard drive. Let other people play them. That's it. Whether you use our site or somewhere else.
Cool. And then Salim's going to set up a YouTube channel soon as soon as everybody hits the like button and subscribes. And then,
we still haven't hit any of the thresholds for previous challenges. So if you get 1,000 likes, I'll make
pretty
a YouTube
soon.
channel.
Pretty soon, it's going to happen. We'll hit the limits, and then we'll get like 1,000 likes on one of these streams,
likes,
and then
I'll
you'll
make
have
a YouTube channel.
All right, we're only. Look at that! We just got to jump at like 30.
Oh god!
I think we're almost there.
And after you watch Andrew's stream and you spend some time on Simmer.io, I would highly suggest that everyone go out and play Ender Lilies because it is a great game. I'm going to go fight the final boss after this.
Good stuff.
Yep, and I'm going to go finish adding more lights to my background for everybody's ADD. Going wild on it. And I guess just welcome everybody back next week. So make sure that you subscribe, hit the button. I got a stream tomorrow. That's linked down below too. So you can hit the watch later button. And then there's courses and other stuff linked down below. Feel free to check them all out. And I guess thanks again, everybody. Anybody got any last final parting words before we go? The bright green circle is really cool too.
Yeah, I've been watching that the whole time.
I'll link that thing if anybody wants to get it. It was actually like only $50 on or $40 on Amazon. I saw it on a cool site and I was like, this is the neatest thing ever. It has a whole bunch of different buttons. Got modes here to control it, change the color, change the speed and color. Huh?
Excuse me. Ooh.
It's really fun. I like the thing. The weird part is that it mixes in with the frame remote and they look exactly the same. So I get them mixed up constantly. But yeah, I love that little thing. It's super cool. And it just fits in great with Yoda there.
Where's the picture of me in the background?
That's a good question. I need to get one. I got James's art up there. It's just got a weird filter on it right now. That's his Pantheon art.
I have a picture of me though.
I don't. I need to get one. I'll put it up there in the reflection. I don't know if you can see it in the mirror there.
How about I draw it? How about I draw a picture of me?
That's the Vanguard post, the Vanguard magazine cover right up in there. I'll get a picture of you and I'll put it right up there where the work hard sign is. You can reflect in the mirror. Perfect. I just got to find a good funny one of you.
There are no funny pictures of me.
I wish James was around. I'd have him draw me one.
Oh God!
Like draw me a good character.
Emotional. Stop.
Oh, sorry. All right. Well,
all right, guys.
Thanks again, everybody. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and all that stuff. Again, sharing is the most important part. Yeah, I don't know. I'll shut up now. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks.
Thanks for having us on.
Button.
Bye,
Take
guys.
care, Jason.
I'm gonna hit last. Oh, let's see what this one does. We'll do a weird outro.